knife to the neck, and if I make you dead, you won't live.
Not only did this genre have great albums in '97, if nu metal was a movie, it would be The Fifth Element.
Rocket launcher, arrow launcher, a famous net launcher, the always efficient flamethrower. My favorite.
Today we are ranking nu metal albums from 1997, starting with Incubus with Science. This and Fungus Among Us are the only album from this band I would describe as being nu metal. From Morning View on, it's just alternative rock. Regardless, these guys were among my favorite bands in the 2000s, and I still absolutely adore this record, easily earning a spot in their top 3. You've got bangers like A Certain Shade of Green, Vitamin, Redefine, Favorite Things, and New Skin, funky and infectious melodic fare like Summer Romance, and then brain-bending experimental weirdness like Nebula and Magic Medicine. Incredible performances all around with very memorable riffs, wild drumming, and killer DJ work too. This is going to perfection. Next we have Seven Dust with Seven Dust. Solid debut from a band that first and foremost I appreciate for really having their own sound, thanks in large part to Lejon Witherspoon's robust, powerful voice. Like, he is easily one of the most talented singers to come out of a scene that was not especially known for that. Some big tracks for them here like Black and Too Close to Hate, Bitch is a banger, Terminator is a funky groover with some Faith No More sounding influences. Not their best work, songwriting and production is a little weak, but a really strong beginning for them. I put them at amazing. Then we got Clawfinger with Clawfinger. We talk about Swedish bands a lot here on the channel, but I don't think ever within the realm of nu metal. They come in strong here with the Middle Eastern elements and a mix of rapid-fire rap vocals with some pretty haunting female ululated clean singing on equal parts aggression and highly atmospheric opener two sides. Also can't help but bang my head to the likes of Hold Your Head Up, Biggest and the Best, Not Even You, and Crazy. More cool melodic fusions on Nobody Knows, strong hip-hop flow on Wrong State of Mind. I had not previously listened to this record, but it ended up being another welcome surprise that I would add to my growing list of underrated releases. I put it at great tier. Then we have Coal Chamber with Coal Chamber. The debut album from another foundational nu metal band, and I'd argue this is up in the top 10 as far as the most important in terms of where the genre would ultimately go. Lots of great tracks here like Bradley, Big Truck, Sway, My Frustration, and of course Loco, which is probably a top 5 important track for nu metal. It's definitely among the first that comes to mind when trying to define it. I will say though, I don't think this one aged quite as well as the two that followed, as the songwriting is a little bit more basic and there is quite a bit of filler in the second half that makes for an uneven listen. So ended up putting it at fantastic. Then we have Saliva with Saliva. The debut album from this band, arguably most known for Click Click Boom off of the next album. A lot of the same hallmarks, though, of that record are already present here, just without the same level of studio polish and a slightly more raw edge. I like opener Beg with its heavier riffs, dingier distortion, and quite a bit of screaming, but sadly this is not a very good summary of the record overall. It still has plenty of that Memphis rock and roll swing on others like Sync and poppier moments like Call It Something. The deeper you get in, the more you realize that this is just another pretty disorganized and somewhat generic rock album with a few heavier points of punctuation. None of these tracks even made their way onto the greatest hits album, if that tells you anything. So put it at okay. Then we got Sugar Ray with Floored. Another band like Incubus that would quickly exit the genre and rocket to mainstream success with their follow-up in 1459. This was their second record following Lemonade and Brownies in 1995, and it goes much harder than the music they are remembered for, though it does contain radio single Fly, which I would argue is the success of that outlier pop track that encouraged them to make the changes that they did. Probably smart as far as your bank account goes. That said, it was reportedly Mark McGrath at the time pushing hardest for heavier tracks with more screaming, and there's still plenty of that in the likes of RPM, Breathe, and the groovy bass-driven Anyone. A little sloppy and unfocused, jumping from metal to hardcore punk to rap and other things, but still enjoyable. I put it at good tier. Then we got Snot with Get Some. Love that we have bands named Saliva and Snot on the same list, all of the bodily fluids coming in. Classic album with more of an emphasis on elements of hardcore as well as funk and just a hint of jazz. I've often quoted the spoken word intro of opener Snot and have been known to blast other killer songs here like Joyride, Get Some, Deadfall, Toccato, and the equal parts funny and ripping my balls. Heavy use of wah pedal and Lynn Straight's scream makes for a very intense listen. Sadly, both he and his dog Dobbs, featured on the album cover, would be killed in a car accident in December of 1998, so we would never hear where he might have gone from here. I wouldn't say this is as much of a favorite as some of the others on this list, but it's an always fun revisit, so I'm putting it at amazing. Then we have Human Waste Project with E-Lux.
Without apology,
The only full-length album from this California band formed in 1993, and another one of the rare cases with female vocals here courtesy of Amy Echo. There is a lot of great energy on here and similarities in sound to Snot in some ways, I would say. The production is also pretty strong as handled by Ross Robinson. Power Ship was the big single, and I also enjoy Slide, Disease, and Drugstore. Unfortunately, there are also some more grating moments as with Exit Wound, where both the songwriting and vocal performance are like nails on a chalkboard for me, and the album in general just feels a little bit unfocused. Still, it was relatively positively received and also earned them a spot at Ozfest and touring with Coal Chamber in 1998, but they ended up disbanding that same year. I'm going to put it at great tier. Then we have Nothing Faced with Pacifier. The debut full-length from this fan-favorite band, as their self-titled is considered a demo, and several tracks from it ended up being re-recorded for this one. Stronger openers continue with the infectious and headbob-inducing One Thing, followed by the equally infectious Pacifier. Apparently this track was compared a lot to Korn at the time, but it's night and day to me. Also enjoy Lipstick, Self-Punishment with that wah-wah, Defaced, Useless, and Hitch. Another one that's a little bit hit and miss in execution at times, especially in the clean vocal department, but overall a good time, and I actually prefer this to some of their later stuff. This one also went to amazing. Then we got Papa Roach with Old Friends from Young Years. The largely forgotten debut before they blew up with Infest. You can't even find it on their Spotify page, in spite of them, I believe, personally owning the rights to it, which again should maybe tell you something. The leap between this album and the next one is pretty significant. This feels like a pretty generic mix of rap, rock, and metal without nearly the same amount of care in writing memorable songs, and it also just sounds like it was recorded in a garage. Still, it has some stronger points and wasn't painful to listen to like some other albums in this genre can be. Interesting oddity when looking back at their more humble beginnings. This one went to okay. Then we have Head PE with Head PE. Love the unique sound Jared Gomes' voice brings to the table given his mixed indigenous and Afro-Brazilian descent, and he reports influences from Bob Marley and NWA to the Ramones and Black Sabbath, and I also hear a little Cypress Hill in places. I'd actually say that this is probably their best album from front to back. Killer Opener and POS and Serpent Boy is a great collision of Korn riffs and fun braggadocious rap lyrics. Tired of Sleep has a sick stand-up bass hook and beat that reminds me of A Tribe Called Quest, while Spam has more of a punk influence. 33 really traps into that 90s rap sound fitting to the label. This feels like Jared is a rapper first and new metal elements come second. Very diverse and quite consistent. I love it. It's going to perfection. Then we have Guano Apes with Proud Like a God. Another debut, this one out of Germany, and leaning more into the alternative rock side of the spectrum, but there's more than enough rap, funk, programming, and scratching to warrant its inclusion. Open Your Eyes makes for an excellent opener with its incredible sounding bass work on the verses and catchy clean chorus. Also dig Maria and the kind of Rage Against the Machine meets Mandolin of Lord of the Boards. Sandra Nasik makes for another strong frontwoman on this list with a powerful voice and fairly strong range from screaming to the softer, almost ginger sounding vibes of tracks like Rain. The highs here are among my favorite songs on this entire list, but some are definitely better than others, so it landed at great tier. Then we got No One Is Innocent with Utopia. France getting on the map here with this sophomore effort. Invisible really getting me going with those ever-driving guitars. Digging the Spanish vocals on Chile, as well as the more industrial, almost ministry-sounding nomenclatura. Women, Se Que No Savans, and a few others also have some of that industrial groove, more in a Filth Pig and White Zombie style. Always a sucker for the more industrialized nu metal fusions. Also several tracks in French, like the hypnotic Radio 101 and Amere. A little Primus in Autobahn Babies, another band I was less familiar with, but glad this video pushed me to discover, because this album really is an excellent journey from start to finish. It landed at fantastic. Then we have Body Count with Violent Demise.
No, it's my way, got slay, got play. You stay down, you fuck around in my town, you drown, fuck.
The third album from this rap metal group led by the legendary Ice-T.
And I got news for you. That means you're gay.
In many ways, I would argue that these guys are almost as important to the formation of nu metal as Korn, as Body Count's debut dropped actually 2 years prior to Korn's self-titled in 1992, alongside Rage Against the Machine's also self-titled debut and Faith No More's Angel Dust. All of the trademark elements of the genre are here, from the infectious grooving guitars to the hip-hop influences to the often juvenile sense of humor of tracks like Strippers. Some fun moments like My Way, You're Fucking With BC, and I Used to Love Her, but another one here I would call pretty inconsistent, at least for my taste. I put it at good tier. Then we have Limp Bizkit with $3 Bill, y'all.
Because you're sick of yourself, well, I'm sick of you too.
People tend to talk the most about follow-ups Significant Other and Chocolate Starfish, and to be fair, those albums are stronger in my opinion from both a songwriting and production standpoint, but this debut represents the band at their most raw and heavy overall, and aside from their cover of George Michael's Faith, it also strikes me as a much more serious sounding record. Ripper of an opener in Pollution, followed up strong by Counterfeit with that awesome harmonic riff, and the pit-worthy Stuck after that. It gets a little bit less consistent after that, but I also dig Nobody Loves Me and the more hip-hop focused Indigo Flow with its emphasis on the bass. This track in particular seems to be hinting the most at things to come. This one went to fantastic. And then we have Deftones with Around the Fur. Another one of my favorite bands from back in the day, but one of the few that I'd say still makes the list with its continued solid discography, and another album that I would put in the top 3 of their discography. This one kind of hits the sweet spot of maintaining the pure nu metal vibes of Adrenaline while also incorporating more of their own unique trademark touches before spilling over into something beyond the genre with White Pony. Really every track is notable here, but standouts for me include My Own Summer, Labia, Around the Fur, Head Up featuring Max Cavalera, and one of my all-time favorite songs, period, in Be Quiet and Drive. Absolutely has to make Perfection possibly my favorite album on the entire list.
Korn powers Vitalize. Monkey, David, Fieldy, and Jonathan.
Music. We're gonna have a lot of fun. Could be good.
Today we are ranking nu metal albums from 1998, and we're starting with Soulfly with Soulfly.
I'm gonna get you live with your soul.
Strong start for Max's post-Sepultura career and an album I listened to a ton in high school. Super heavy opener and Eye for an Eye, and you can just feel the genuine vitriol and vengeance in his voice. Dino and Burton from Fear Factory also guest on this one. Bleed is a killer single and one of the few more enjoyable guest appearances I've heard from Fred Durst. Killer riffs on No Hope Equals No Fear, really emphasizing their unique drumming on Tribe. You've also got Chino of Deftones on the ripping First Commandment, and Benji Webb of Skindred on Quilambo. Gonna put this one at Perfection. Next up is Spineshank with Strictly Diesel. Now, I like these guys, but this debut lacks some of the stronger points of its follow-up. The vocals are a bit more hit and miss, and I don't find the songwriting to be as memorable either. Just feels like stuff my friends and I used to record in my basement back in the day. One day, maybe I will share some of that. I do have recordings. Anyways, a few standouts in 40 Below, Stain, and the extra industrialized title track. Solid enough listen if on the drearier side. I'm gonna put it at good tier. Then we have Kid Rock with Devil Without a Cause. That is the most 90s music video ever. I feel like I'm watching a Michael Bay film. Now, I'm not really a fan of Mr. Rock in general, but this album is just plain stupid fun that I enjoy just as much as when my friend first played it for me in middle school. Ba with da Ba is the perfect encapsulation of what nu metal was all about, and Cowboy was an inescapable anthem. The title track is a bop with that funky wah-wah, I Am the Bull God is infectious as fuck. Just a well-written album that shows a lot of effort, like it or not. One of the more successful fusions of rock, metal, and hip-hop you can find out there. There's a reason why it was such an explosive success when it came out, and it's a landmark for the genre, so I'm gonna put it at fantastic. Next up is Cold with Cold. Now, I've been known to recommend 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage for many years now, but this was my first time circling back to the debut, and it's fine. Great heavy opener and go away, but unfortunately after that it loses me a bit. Lots of just ideas that are better executed on the next album. I do enjoy Everyone Dies. Kind of a vibe if you want something super mopey and depressing, but there are just better options for that too. So I'm gonna put this one at okay. Next up is 1 Minute Silence with Available in All Colors.
That's the mother story, that's the mother filler. For all the little boys and girls. Brain spiller!
I wasn't super familiar with this Irish band, but they've had quite a few mentions in the comments of my previous videos. Really dig the bass tone and seriously catchy groove of opener New Dogs, New Tricks. Not in love with all of the vocals here, but it's way better than some of the others on this list. It feels somewhere between Head PE and Rage Against the Machine. The latter really comes out on tracks like South Central, and Brain Splitter is another standout. Maybe some comparisons to Snot, as well as touches of industrial and really strong drumming with tons of precision and speed. Not one of my favorites, but I'm gonna put it at great tier. Then we have Orgy with Candy Ass. Now, there are going to be some albums on this list that kind of stretch what it means to be nu metal, partly because there was just less of it before 99 and 2000, but I always feel like this one fits the scene more than well enough. It's sort of like, what if Depeche Mode decided to try their hand at the genre? Regardless, I really enjoy the industrial and electronic elements, and the songwriting is extremely catchy, making for some serious hits in Social Enemies, Stitches, Dissension, Dizzy, and their cover of Blue Monday. They kind of went downhill after this one, if you ask me, but this one still holds a special place in my heart. It's going to fantastic. Next up is Kilgore with A Search for Reason.
If you could just feel my sorrow. To see what I can be tomorrow.
Now, unfortunately, this has some of the most annoyingly yarly vocals I've heard in this genre, which mostly ruins otherwise pretty fun and high-energy music. I like when he does the more kind of Patton-esque variations on tracks like Avowal, but his default is just so grating to me. Props that he can really belt it out at times, but the inflection is just put on way too strong, in my opinion. Again, music's pretty solid, but yeah, I'm not really looking forward to revisiting this one anytime soon. It went to okay. Then we have Nothing Face with an audio guide to everyday atrocity. Another one I'd actually not listened to the debut until now, and was pleasantly surprised with it though in this case. Some real banger tracks here like Grinning, Villains, and Breathe Out, and then the dark atmosphere of others like Sleeper. It's lacking some polish, but pretty darn enjoyable, picking up a little bit of 311 energy sort of mixed in with the heavier stuff as well. I'm gonna put this one at great tier. Then we have Hamlet with Insomnio. The fourth album from this Spanish quintet that formed all the way back in 1987 in Madrid. I always feel bad because they are considered pioneers in the region and they consider this to be their most important album, but I just have never been fully able to get into their music so far. This was their first more nu metal focused album, and it has its moments and actually gets quite better in the second half, I would say, but I just feel like you have to wade through quite a bit of mediocre material before getting to stronger tracks like Muercela, La Cabra, Mal, and Tan Simple Como Decir No. If you love them, as always, that's great. Share why you disagree on any of these in the comments. This is all just my opinion. I'm going to put this one at good tier. By the way, am I the only one that thinks that looks like Leafy on the cover?
If you look at anyone with a weak chin, their enemy is the profile shot.
Next up, we have System of a Down with System of a Down. Now, I still maintain that their debut is their best and most consistent album. Toxicity is great, don't get me wrong, but I just think that there's overall more meat on the bone with this one. Tons of killer guitar work in particular all over this thing, with many career highs for Darren on the likes of Sweet Pea, War, and Soil. The latter also emphasizing some of my favorite vocal moments of the entire band's discography, adding Sugar and No to that list as well. Then there's the slower and quite beautiful Spiders. Really, every track is amazing here. There's not a single skip. I'm gonna put this one at perfection. Then we have Vanilla Ice with Hard to Swallow. Yes, when Mr. Ice Ice Baby's short-lived pop career dried up, he tried to reinvent himself as a nu metal guy. And you know what? I expected this to be terrible, but really it's not much worse than what any of the other bands were doing at this time.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Getting some early Limp Bizkit vibes from quite a few of these tracks, and actually Wes Borland's brother Scott even handles the keys here. And then other members include drummer Shannon Larkin of Godsmack, Sonny Mayo of Snot and Sevendust, Doug Ardito of Cellophane and Puddle of Mud, and DJ Swamp of Beck and Ministry. Solid production and atmosphere too, courtesy of Ross Robinson, and the vocal performance works for what it's going for. I had a lot of fun with it. Honestly, I think if this had come out under a different name from someone else, I actually think it would have been way better received. I was looking at some of the reviews and ratings from this time, and I just think it got unfairly maligned. So yeah, I'm gonna put it at great tier. Maybe one of my hottest takes to date on the channel, but as always, I don't care. I like what I like. Then we have Stuck Mojo with Rising. Now, I did not much care for this album at all, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't get my head bobbing. Consistently infectious grooves to the guitar and bass, but unfortunately the rap rock vocals are just downright annoying on this one, with lyrics that range from lame to full-on cringe, Southern Pride being a primary offender. I don't even mind these Southern Pride people. I mean, I'm a big Pantera fan, but you could at least be more creative with your lyrics. Fine for throwing on in the background and shutting your brain off, but not much else, I would say. So this is also going to okay. Next up is Ultra Spank with Ultra Spank. Another one that kind of stretches the nu metal label. Pretty fun opener in 5, mixing more atmospheric, almost Tool-like elements in the verse with the crunchy, groovy chorus. The clean vocals are pretty iffy and amateurish, but I still had fun with quite a bit of this. Solid bass and industrial percussion on Butter, and great drumming just in general. Fired is a banger, and for the slower stuff, I liked Sponge quite a bit. I think the bigger problem here is that they try to be Tool a bit too much, and songs end up dragging as a result, especially when you're comparing those compositions. I can stay engaged for a longer Tool track. These guys have trouble keeping me interested for just 4 minutes a lot of the time. Songwriting and execution just needed a little bit more time in the oven, but I'm gonna put it at good tier. Then we have Pitch Shifter with www.pitchshifter.com. Now, I've always considered this to be much more of an industrial metal album than a nu metal one, but I'll take any excuse to talk about it because it's an underrated classic. I first discovered them with the song Genius, which was on the awesome Mortal Kombat Annihilation soundtrack, and what an incredibly heavy and stank-face-inducing track that is. And when you check out the rest, I think it all lives up to that level of quality, with other equal part headbanger and sardonic tracks like Microwaved, Secondhand, Please Sir, A Better Lie, and What's in It for Me. Start to finish, all around great. And again, it makes me both bang my head and laugh out loud at times. I love all the insane breakbeats and effects too. If you've never listened to this, do yourself a favor and add it to your listening list. I'm putting it at perfection. Honorable mention to Slayer with Diabolus in Musica. I know that gets mentioned as kind of their nu metal album, and it was in the list, but it's still very much a thrash album. I just don't think it really fits on here. Remember to like the video if you're enjoying it, but that brings us to our last pick in Korn with Follow the Leader. Now, I have an interesting relationship with this particular album in that it's still one of my favorites from the band, but I also recognize that it is very inconsistent. It has some of their highest career highs in the likes of It's On, one of their best openers if you ask me, Dead Bodies Everywhere, and of course the inescapable singles Got the Life and Freak on a Leash. But then it also has some of their worst tracks to date in the likes of Children of the Corn and All in the Family. All of that ends up making for a very uneven listen, and I can't possibly put it in perfection for that reason, but again, overall, I still love most of it and consider it to be a benchmark album in the genre. Even the imagery, like that cover, you think nu metal, and this is like one of the first cover arts that comes to mind. So I'm putting it at fantastic. These days, I may be all about the death and black metal, but some things you never grow out of.
Steven, what are you doing in there?
Drugs.
Today we are ranking nu metal albums from 1999, and we're starting with Korn with Issues. Starting big here with probably my favorite Korn album, and by the way, I know that 1999 is not the year that nu metal started by any means, but it is the year that it kind of blew up. And speaking of which, as for Korn, I love the debut, and both Life It's Peachy and Follow the Leader have some seriously high points. But this is probably my favorite album from start to finish. Check out my Korn tier list for more thoughts, but major highlights here including Beg For Me, Falling Away From Me, Make Me Bad, Hey Daddy, Somebody Someone, and Let's Get This Party Started. Massive production too from Brendan O'Brien with a bass end that never fails to get me banging my head like crazy. This is going to perfection. Then we have Crazy Town with The Gift of the Game.
Come my lady, come my lady, you're my butterfly, sugar, baby.
Now I always hesitate to actually call this a nu metal album as it's extremely light on the metal part in my opinion. Really, this is mostly a group of white dudes doing corny rap while dressed in nu metal garb and rocking tattoos.
I'm the DJ, bitch. Yo, I'm the singer, rapper. I could do both, son.
Consider that their #1 hit on Billboard, Butterfly, has virtually no metal elements. That continues to be the only memorable song for me too, as even when they do bring out the distorted guitars on the likes of Toxic and Think Fast, it just sounds like Limp Bizkit and Head PE from Wish. Probably the worst thing on this list, as it commits the cardinal sin of being boring. So it is going to meh. Then we have Seven Dust with Home. Huge step up from the debut, if you ask me. Lejean's got so much power, and I love the alternations between the aggressive harsh vocals and his singing, which is just so captivating. You've got some major classics on here too, like Waffle, as well as Denial, which were definitely the ones that I remember the most from back in the day. Then you've also got Blender at the end with Chino Moreno of Deftones, but really the most notable thing about this album is just how damn consistent it is. Even some of my favorite nu metal albums have some filler, but not so much here. My favorite from them, personally, it is going to fantastic. Then we have POD with the fundamental elements of Southtown. Another album I owned back in the day, mostly due to the excellent track Southtown that I not only listened to on repeat, but it was also one of the earlier songs I learned on guitar. The rest of the album is just kind of okay. I feel like there's 2 or 3 other good tracks on here, but not particularly as memorable. Pretty corny lyrics, and I feel like, unlike Limp Bizkit, they take themselves way too seriously. Some points, though, for stylistic variety with a little reggae on tracks like Set Your Eyes to Zion. Also, their first platinum album, so props to them for that. I'm gonna put it at good tier. Then we have Machine Head with The Burning Red. Machine Head is not a nu metal band, but this was definitely their detour into the sound, like many bands dabbled briefly around this time, from Sepultura to Slayer. Rob Flynn even breaking out the crazy hairdo that I'm a little ashamed to say I also had the summer of 2000, and also a little embarrassed that this was the only Machine Head album I ever owned back in the day. I got it in one of those scam, like, pick 15 albums for $30 mail-in deals. But I listened to it quite a bit back then, and revisiting tracks like Desire to Fire, From This Day, and The Blood, the Sweat, the Tears was quite the trip down memory lane. It's not good, but it's not the worst thing here either. The message in a bottle cover, though, is definitely a crime against humanity.
How embarrassing.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this one at okay. Then we have Stained with Dysfunction. The band's last really heavy album before breaking it big with the slightly more commercially friendly Break the Cycle. Love the dark atmosphere and heavy riffing. Aaron screams a lot more on this thing too. It's not an album I feel inclined to go back to super often, but every time I do, I enjoy tracks like Suffocate, the groovy Just Go, Crawl, Home, and of course Mud Shovel, which was another one I put on my burn CD mixes back in the day all the time. Surprisingly consistent and cohesive listen. It has its faults, but on this list, it's on the higher end for me. I'm gonna put it at amazing. Then we have Dope with Felons and Revolutionaries. I used to be a relatively big Dope fan in the 2000s, but these days it's this debut that's the only one I still enjoy listening to. It's still edgy and kind of cringe at times, but not to the degree of where they would go from here. Think of it as kind of an extension of that early Marilyn Manson sound, combining elements of industrial with a rebellious attitude. Lots of fuck this, fuck that kind of lyrics, but ultimately fun for me on tracks like Opener Pig Society, Debonair with its pounding drums and infectious hook, the chugging, grooving Everything Sucks, and Spine for You. It's dumb, but I still enjoy it when I'm in the right mood, which is true of a lot of this music, really. Like, I still have a lot of fun with all this stuff, even the kind of bad stuff. This is going to great. Then we have Static X with Wisconsin Death Trip. As a fan of both industrial metal and nu metal, this was like the perfect collision of those worlds, and also with my introduction to Wayne's instantly recognizable syncopated vocals and hairdo. So many great songs that are both catchy and aggressive. Of course, you've got the classic Push It, which I can't even tell you how many times I've jammed along to, as well as the equally infectious I'm With Stupid, Fix, and Bled for Days. But I also like the kind of lower key atmospheric tracks like Stem and The Trance is the Motion. Just an all-around good time and an instant classic, if you ask me. This one is also going to perfection. Then we have Methods of Mayhem with Methods of Mayhem.
You gotta listen to me, I tell you what I see, never believe what you read, this shit is spreading like a disease.
Tommy Lee of Motley Crue fame's embarrassing attempt to capitalize on the nu metal movement. I was actually pleased that it was referenced in the Pam and Tommy series that came out a little while back.
The Lonnie? Tractor?
I know who Lonnie is.
Quite a list of musicians here, though, known for much better music. Pretty shocking to dig into it, honestly, with everyone from Danny Lohner of Nine Inch Nails and A Perfect Circle to fucking Randy Jackson on bass. Yes, that Randy Jackson.
That was cool, man. It was kind of hot.
Also appearances from Snoop Dogg, Kid Rock, Fred Durst, Lil' Kim, and more. George Clinton is on this record. It can be kind of fun in a very stupid way, with tracks like Hypocritical, Anger Management, and Get Naked, but it gets worse and worse, I would say, the deeper you get into it from there. I'd compare it to enjoying like a Michael Bay film. Certified gold, if you can believe it. It was an interesting time for mainstream music, for sure, but yeah, it's going to meh. Not as bad as Crazy Town, but yeah, not great. Then we have Cold Chamber with Chamber Music.
Cover me when I run.
Probably my personal favorite from these guys. People tend to talk more about the self-titled debut, but I'd argue as much of a perfect encapsulation of nu metal that album is, it's aged the worst for me at this point. I like the slightly more melodic turn and increased dynamic songwriting of tracks like Tragedy and Tyler's Song, still super heavy and fun, but with just a little bit more to chew on. I also love the string intro Mist and how it fits the album art and overall atmosphere. It's definitely not the most consistent album from track to track. Interestingly enough, that goes to Dark Days for me now, and the Shock the Monkey cover with Ozzy feels a little out of place, but overall I enjoy this one a lot more than many of the others here, so it is going to amazing. Then we have Mushroom Head with M3. Bit of a transitional album for this band. I would say this is where they actually tipped over into really making a name for themselves. I'd also say it's a big step up in quality from the last few, which I found to be largely kind of nonsense. Honestly, though, this is a band that gets associated a lot with nu metal due to a number of factors, including their look, but I wouldn't even exactly refer to them as that when it comes to the music. If anything, they feel more inspired by like Faith No More, which I would consider to be like a proto-nu metal group, but not actually part of the movement. Kind of like how Venom and Celtic Frost aren't really black metal bands per se. Unfortunately, they are not as nearly as impressive songwriters as Faith No More, in my opinion. Still interesting, not bad, but I've just never really been super into these guys. It's going into okay for me. Then we have Limp Bizkit with Significant Other.
It's just one of those days where you don't want to wake up. Everybody sucks.
Now, if somebody asked me, what is nu metal? I feel like I could just give them this album and say, this. It really is one of those records with all the defining elements, the mix of rap and screaming, the heavy down-tuned guitars, the DJ, and in my opinion, all those elements really firing on all cylinders. And regardless of what you think about the Bizkit and Fred Durst, the musicianship here is just beyond reproach, thanks especially to the talented Wes Borland, John Otto, and Sam Rivers. They were the masters of just taking a really simple groove and turning it it into the most catchy, infectious thing you have ever heard. Some of their biggest tracks here too, in Nookie, Rearranged, and of course Break Stuff, which continues to be a workout staple for me to this day. Their best album, I would say, and campiness aside, it's no wonder that it hit #1 on Billboard and even went toe-to-toe on the charts that year with the likes of Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys. Normally I'd put this in perfection, but I limited myself to just 3 and it got beat out, so I am putting it at the top of fantastic. Then we have Power Man 5000 with Tonight the Stars Revolt.
Now this is what it's like when worlds collide. You ready to go? Got it, I'm ready to go.
The third album from this band, but considering how different and pretty bad the albums that came before are, this is the logical place to start. Far from the best album on this list by a long shot, I've often described it as like discount Rob Zombie, which notably vocalist Spider-One is actually Zombie's younger brother and he features on the track Blast Off to Nowhere. But if you ask me, this has one of the best nu metal songs of all time in When Worlds Collide. This was another one of those childhood primers for my later metal obsession too, as I spent many hours hearing this song while playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 on my Nintendo 64. Some other fun tracks in Supernova goes Pop, Nobody's Real, and the title track. A bit inconsistent, I don't think any of the tracks live up to just how strong that single is, but it's a fun album with the full nu metal package right down to the music videos and costuming. A bit inconsistent, I don't think any of the other tracks live up to just how strong that single is, but it's a fun album with the full nu metal package right down to the music videos and costuming. I am going to put this one at great tier. Then we have Puya with Fundamental. This was the only album on this list that I was not particularly familiar with. I like the Spanish language rapping though, which reminds me of Nonpoint, but then there's also this kind of vaguely sublime quality at times too. They like to fuse elements of jazz, salsa, and maybe even a little reggae into the metal. That could be interesting, but the execution feels a little bit sloppy in comparison to some other bands that do similar things. Still, points for being interesting and showcasing a level of songwriting and performance variety well beyond a lot of the bands in the genre. Check out the title track and see what you think, or for one of the heavier ones, you can check out Montate. I'm going to put this one at good. And then we have Slipknot with Slipknot. As I've said in a number of videos at this point, this record was really the turning point for me. I had been primed throughout the 90s at this point by alternative radio and movie soundtracks, hearing the likes of Korn and Rammstein, but this was the first metal album I think I listened to from start to finish, and man did it blow my mind the moment I pressed play on Sick in my Discman. Every song is a banger. You've got classics like Eyeless, Spit It Out, Liberate, Surfacing, and can we just take a moment to again mourn the time where songs like Wait and Bleed actually got mainstream radio play? Then you've got more atmospheric stuff like Tattered and Torn, Frail Limb Nursery, Prosthetics, and Scissors. Best vocals from Corey, in my opinion, best percussion to date, and best DJ elements from Sid, too. I have to put this one, obviously, at perfection. Some of the biggest and most defining albums of the genre this year. They just also happen to be some of the corniest.
Which was the style at the time?
Today we are ranking nu metal albums from the year 2000, and we're starting with Linkin Park and Hybrid Theory.
It's like a paranoid broken over my back. It's like a whirlwind inside of my head.
There's a reason why this album made such an impact on me when it came out and dominated the airwaves that summer. It's just a perfectly executed version of the genre and just well-written record in general. So much so that it still holds up for me to this day when listening to the likes of Papercut, One Step Closer, Points of Authority, Crawling, and In the End. And catchy singles aside, I also love the deeper cuts like By Myself, A Place for My Head, and even the DJ track Cure for the Itch. Timeless record that at this point I'd hold up with the classics. It is going to perfection. Next we have the Union Underground with An Education in Rebellion.
To be honest, to death, I won't let it, I need it to make a man, yeah.
I vaguely remember liking this album as a kid, but I couldn't remember much about it, unlike many of the others on this list. The phrases that came to mind were Discount Marilyn Manson and Power Man 5000, but less fun. South Texas Death Ride is kind of a bop, and Turn Me On Mr. Deadman definitely jogged my memory, but the latter quite literally just feels like a complete copycat of When Worlds Collide. Mostly boring and recycled with a few high points that can be enjoyable, but yeah, this one's just going to okay. Then we have Spineshank with The Height of Callousness. Another album I was pretty into back in the day, Asthmatic is a banger opener and the title track right after goes even harder. Some pretty sing-along worthy tracks too, like Synthetic and New Disease. Cyanide 2600 rips. Pretty consistently enjoyable album. I'm gonna put it at fantastic. Then we have Nothing Face with Violence. Similar to American Head Charge in some ways, I would say, and a pretty vocal fan base who always points out when I forget to include them, so I made sure to get them on this one. The songs are okay, but the singing is a little meh, and it just lacks some of the infectious punch of my favorites in the genre. I actually always have trouble getting all the way through this record. Can't Wait for Violence and Hidden Hands are pretty good. I'm gonna put this one at good tier. Then we have Primer 55 with Introduction to Mayhem. This is another album that also came in that scam 15 albums for $30 pack I mentioned in the previous video for $19.99. Heavy emphasis on rap and turntables for almost a 50-50 split with the metal elements on this one. Very catchy opener, and Loose Super Freak Love is pretty infectious. G's is a certified banger. Cheesy, maybe even a little bit cringe, but it is fun. Like, I think I actually had more fun on this re-listen than back in the day when I was listening to it. Just a bit over long for what it is, and the quality dips in the second half, but overall, I think this one fits well at amazing. Yo, we have plenty more albums to go, but if you're enjoying the video so far, be sure to hit the like button. Comment your own rankings of these albums. Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Also, I make videos like this at least twice a week, so consider subscribing or even becoming a channel member for some extra perks. But next up, we have Kitty with Spit. Now, I loved this album when it came out, and it still has some bangers for me, but I don't think it has held up as well as a whole. The title track is a sick way to open the record, and Charlotte has a really infectious chorus. I also really love the drumming on Do You Think I'm a Whore and the groove on Raven. But the real spotlight track here continues to be Brackish. I still get the urge to break something every time I listen to that one. It ends up on my gym playlist for sure. I'd put this one about on par with the Cold Chamber debut in that it has some real classics, but also a few duds and some inconsistent songwriting that just doesn't hit the same as it did back then, for me personally anyways. Paper Doll, for instance, I just find kind of annoying, but I'm going to put it at great tier. Then we have Mudvayne with LD50. Another band I loved when I was in high school. I'd even go so far to say that they were one of my favorites at the time when they released this banger. And aside from Dig being one of those defining songs and a new metal meme in its own right, you've also got Internal Primates Forever, Death Blooms, and my personal favorite, Nothing to Gain. Every band member is firing on all cylinders here, especially bassist Rhino and drummer Matthew McDonough. Not to mention the songwriting is more mathy and experimental than it ever would be on any releases from here. I could honestly care less about the other records, but this one is a defining moment in the genre and for the band, so it is going to perfection. Then we have Earth Crisis with Slither. I must have blocked out that this fairly respected metallic hardcore forerunner had a new metal phase. And I don't have much to say about it. It's pretty bad. I would say don't even bother unless you're just really morbidly curious, but check out Earth Crisis because they've got some great like formative 90s metalcore or metallic hardcore stuff going on. This one though, it's going to okay. Then we had Taproot with Gift. Such an underrated album. I have probably worn out my CD copy of this one with how many times I've played it. I have not liked any of their other albums, but this one stands tall with some of my favorite rapid-fire alternations between screaming and nasally singing on tracks like Mirror's Reflection, Again and Again, and Emotional Times. Also love the opening track Smile and I, but really this is a headbanger from start to finish for me with both great hooks and that trademark dark, angsty atmosphere of the time. This one I ended up putting at fantastic. It's near perfection though. It is in my like top 10 of the genre overall. Then we have Apartment 26 with Hallucinating. The second album from this industrial nu metal crew that I'd compare to the likes of Orgy and Pitch Shifter, but also with some hip-hop influences scattered throughout. Great mix of both of those sounds on opener backwards. You get those heavy verses and breakbeats, but then also a more hooky, rock-oriented chorus. Well produced, and the electronic elements help it stand out here. Burton C. Bell of Fear Factory also makes a guest appearance on the European version with Void. Also enjoyed Doing It Anyway, sliced beats and basic breakdown. Far from the best here, but a fun addition that I had not listened to previously. It is going to great tier. Then we have Disturbed with The Sickness. I know a lot of people probably look back on this album fondly, but even as someone who was deep into nu metal at this time, I never really connected with The Sickness. But I will say that I definitely know every word to Down with the Sickness, and there are a couple of other songs on here that I remember pretty well and appreciate, like Stupefy. Likewise, the songwriting can be kind of interesting, and I really like the unique vocals and how they utilize the drumming in an almost tribal way. A lot of people might put this higher since it is definitely another one of those kind of landmark albums for nu metal, but whatever you may think personally, and again, this is just my subjective ranking, I would put it at good tier.
Sorry, not sorry.
Then we have Papa Roach with Infest.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
Another one of those defining records of the era. I remember even people in my freshman football team blasting this song back that summer. Obviously, Last Resort is an undeniable nu metal anthem and probably deserves to be in a top 10 list of genre-defining tracks. But then there are plenty of other solid ones too, like Broken Home, Dead Cell, and Between Angels and Insects, the latter of which was another one of the earlier riffs I learned on guitar. Definitely feels a little dated now, but again, I dig the angst and atmosphere, and I definitely prefer to the more upbeat direction they went from here. Their newer butt rock stuff is just awful in comparison, in my opinion. I'm going to put this one at amazing. Then we have Soulfly with Primitive.
Back to the primitive. Screw all your politics. We got our life to live.
Hot on the heels of the already excellent self-titled debut, Sepultura's Max Cavalera continued to lean into the tribal influences of Roots and fusing them with plenty of nu metal groove. Not to mention a serious who's who of the time with guest spots from Chino Moreno, Corey Taylor, Tom Araya, and more, as well as John Lennon's son Sean on one of my personal favorites here, Sun Song. Other standout tracks for me, Pain, Jump the Fuck Up, Back to the Primitive, and Terrorist. This one is going to perfection. Then we have Ultra Spank with Progress. Kind of an ironic title on this second and final album from this band, who has already simultaneously one of the worst and most nu metal appropriate names in the genre. Snot drummer Fed is also on this record. Catchy enough mix of nu metal and rock on tracks like Push, Crumble, and Click. I'll also say that this has some of the stronger singing vocals on this list. But considering how rabid people were for this sound at the time, it's telling to me that they sold so poorly that they were dropped from the label with this. But frankly, I think that there were groups far more deserving of such a pitiful ending than this band. Like, it's not bad at all. I'm gonna put it at good tier. Then we have Cold with 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage. Another band where I only enjoy one record, but it's a really strong one. Lots of comparisons to Stained here, with this almost feeling like an early draft version of Break the Cycle that came out just a year later. In particular, I would strongly recommend Just Got Wicked with that super memorable hook and dynamic ups and downs, No One, and End of the World, all extremely well-written songs that stick with you. And then again, speaking of Stained, there's an acoustic duet at the end called Bleed with Aaron Lewis. I'm going to put this one at amazing, probably up here. Then we have Godsmack with Awake. I wouldn't exactly call this a nu metal album. It's more of a hard rock, butt rock kind of situation, but there's enough on this one to probably warrant its inclusion. As far as singles go, I heard plenty of the title track and Sick of Life in US Navy recruitment ads, and that opening hook on Awake is admittedly pretty hype. Greed is another head bobber with tons of groove, and tracks like Trippin' and Spiral also have some solid dark atmosphere. Still not an album I loved all the way through or see myself going back too much, but it's enjoyable enough. It's going to great tier. Then we have Snot with Straight Up. Sad that it took the death of vocalist Lynn Straight to make this collaboration happen, but it stands as probably the biggest to ever happen in nu metal before or since. The music, all of which is quite good on its own, is performed largely by Lynn's remaining band members, but each track also has a vocal performance from a big name. We're talking Serj Tankian of System of a Down, Jonathan Davis of Korn, Corey Taylor, Des Fafara from Cold Chamber, Max Cavalera, Lejon Witherspoon, and even spoken word from Ozzy Osbourne, among others. My personal favorites are Divide with Incubus's Brandon Boyd and Requiem, again with Corey Taylor. Not every track is great, but overall this is a must listen for you nu metal fans. It is going to amazing. Then we have Project 86 with Drawing Black Lines. The second record from this long-running Christian nu metal and rock band that is still quietly releasing new albums to this day. More pretty generic and uninspired sounding stuff. Again, not terrible, perfectly listenable, just not interesting or particularly engaging. Me Against Me is decent, and I like the sound of the bass on this album, but it's pretty skippable overall, I would say, so it's going to okay. Then we have Seo Taiji with Ultramania. One of the few albums I had never heard of before until doing this list. Seo Taiji, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that exactly right, but this is a Korean musician, this being his second solo album, but his sixth, counting his initial 4 with Seo Taiji and the Boys. Apparently he was also instrumental in the transition to free expression in Korean pop music, so props for that. Apparently Ultramania, Feel the Soul, and Internet War were all #1 singles, and this was a best-selling album in Korea. Songs are mostly performed in Korean, which definitely makes for a unique one on this list. The music ain't half bad either. All of the other usual hallmarks are there too, from the rapping and turntables to crunchy, groovy riffs. I could see this one even like rising up on the chart over time, but for now it is going to good tier. Then we have Head PE with Broke. Even though I don't care much for the term guilty pleasure, since I don't think you should ever really feel embarrassed about the music you like, this album probably fits that list. The lyrics range from cringe to outright pretty awful at times, but then again, there's nothing here that isn't also on some of the biggest hip-hop albums of the 90s. Different times is all.
I love that kind of misogyny.
Yes. The phrase that came up in the Discord was degenerate, and I definitely think that word fits here. But if you can get past that, these songs are catchy as fuck. Like Super Infectious Opener and Killing Time, also enjoy Waiting to Die, and another solid Serj Tankian and Morgan Lander collab here on Feel Good. The big tracks here were Bartender, Crazy Legs, and Swan Dive, and I'm also pretty partial to the softer The Meadow closing things out. Unique fusions here of hardcore, punk, hip-hop, world music, and reggae. I'm putting it at fantastic. Then we have Nonpoint with Statement. Getting some Spanish language nu metal on the board here with this band's debut. Never been a huge fan of these guys outside the song Rabia from their third album, but every time I revisit this one ends up being a good time overall. Solid opener in Mind Trip, love the attitude kicking off Victim. Endure makes for a strong, more kind of rock-oriented track. Definitely not something that rises high for me personally, but still pretty strong overall. It is going to great tier. Then we have Hamlet with El Inferno. Album 5 from this also Spanish-speaking band out of Madrid, Spain, who are actually credited as being foundational to alternative metal in general. Unfortunately, I just couldn't really connect with this album either. More generic-sounding guitar work and pretty boring songwriting. I see some love out there for this one, and more power to you again if you love it, but it just came off as kind of dull for me, so landed at okay. Then we have Limp Bizkit with Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water. Just a year after the already well-received and chart-topping Significant Other, love 'em or hate 'em, they came back with another explosive record here. Dumb title and weird cover art aside, this was the record of that year. Like, once more, hitting #1 on Billboard alongside major records from NSYNC, Eminem, and Britney Spears. And I gotta say, dumb as the lyrics can be, once more, these are pristinely written and well-performed tracks that still get my motor running in the likes of My Way, Rollin', and the Mission Impossible track, Take a Look Around. I'm putting this one at fantastic.
Introducing the chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water.
And then we have Deftones with White Pony. As I just recently mentioned in my best albums of 2000 overall list, for over 2 decades now, this has held firm as one of my overall favorite albums of all time. This is where Deftones really situated themselves as a band that would be arguably the last one standing, still making great albums to this day, and really kind of transcended the genre. So many career favorites for me here. You've got ragers like Feiticeira and Elite, but woven alongside more hypnotic atmospheric tracks like Digital Bath, Teenager, and the haunting shrieks of Knife Party. Then of course there's Change and the Maynard James Keenan feature on Passenger. Powerful record from start to finish. It is my favorite on this list. It is going to perfection. Things were just getting going, and yet I'd already say that this was the last really great year for the genre.
The light that burns twice as bright burns half as long, and you have burned so very, very brightly, Roy.
Today we are ranking new metal albums from 2001, starting with System of a Down with Toxicity.
Wake up! Wake up! Run, rush, and put a little makeup! I just have to fade away the shake up!
The self-titled remains my favorite, but this was my first System of a Down album, as I'm sure it was for many. I even remember where I was when the Chop Suey music video premiered for the first time. Then you've got that amazing opener and those chunky riffs of Prison Song, the pure kinetic energy of Toxicity, and the sorrowful ATWA and Aerials as my other favorites. A little bit of tonal whiplash when you've got both serious topical songs and then goofier ones like Bounce, but it's all fun and fantastically performed. Certified hood classic, I would say. It's going to perfection. Then we have Primer 55 with the new release.
This isn't what you wanted. Someone to break you down every motherfucking day.
What a perfect example of a fire burning pretty bright on the debut, only to fizzle out on the second release. This album starts pretty strong with This Life and Growing, feeling like they were leftovers from the same recording session as the debut. But after that, it turns into this weird, lame, and worst of all, boring, like rap, reggae, and at times even ska sounding album before getting heavy again for the final 2 tracks. This one is going to meh. Then we have Dry Kill Logic with the darker side of Nonsense. What a hideous album cover for a mixed bag of an album. Definitely some jams in here that I remember from back in the day though, like Feel the Break, Rot, and of course Nightmare, whose lyrics seem so hard to me back in the day, but are pretty laughable now. Same goes for some of the vocal deliveries, definitely dated, but pretty entertaining. Then you've got Pain and Asphalt that have grooves straight out of a Soulfly record, the former even sharing a name with one of their songs. It's like 60% dumb fun and 40% dull attempts at more moody tracks. I can have fun with it. Overall though, it landed around the middle, a little bit higher than that at great. Then we have Static X with Machine. Get to the Gone is a great opener in the same vein as Push It. Permanence keeps the intensity while also stepping up the synth atmosphere, the latter being a consistent theme of this album, I would say. Black and White is a great single with a catchy chorus. This Is Not and Otsego. Undead are total ragers. Machine has that deeply infectious groove. And then the sense of humor is still there with In a Bag. I was not the biggest fan of Cold. I think it's grown on me over time, but the corny whisper vocals and more melodic focus that would unfortunately begin kind of a trend moving forwards. I just wasn't a big fan of that at the time. I'm also not a big fan of Burn to Burn either. Some people would put this album up with the debut at the top. Personally, I think it falls just a little short, but it's pretty close, so I'm going to put it at fantastic. Then we have Flaw with Through the Eyes. Another album that has a somewhat consistent runtime for me, and notably more emphasis on clean vocals and rock influences. At times I got elements of everything from Helmets and Godsmack to Chevelle and Tool. Some of the stronger tracks for me, Only the Strong, Payback, and Get Up Again. When they are working the grooves, I get pretty into it, despite the kind of sleepy, almost dreamlike vocals that can be kind of hypnotic at times. But then they have the really sleepy and downright dull ones too, like My Letter and Best I Am. I'd say it's strong enough overall, but not one of the best here. Went to good tier. Then we have Kitty with Oracle. This album was recorded as a trio following the departure of guitarist Fallon Bowman just a few weeks before recording. It's also the only album with bassist Talina Atfield. A transition toward a bit of a heavier sound here, both in the vocals and guitar work. I remember enjoying this one a lot back in the day when it came out. Maybe even more than the debut even, but it just hasn't aged really well. Each time I go back to it, I find myself liking it less and less. The songwriting just doesn't feel memorable at all. There's not even one track that comes even close to brackish on here, I would say. Still barely misses bottom tier in that I can at least listen to the whole thing without outright hating it, so it went to okay. Yo, we have plenty more albums to go, but if you're enjoying the video so far, be sure to hit the like button and comment your own rankings, because this is just my opinion and I want to hear yours. That makes the conversation more fun. But next up, we have Machine Head with Supercharger.
Never good enough, even though you'll try and try, I'm gonna call you because I am the thing.
The continuation of Machine Head's nu metal era from the Burning Red, with this opening track sounding very much like they are trying to be Slipknot. Exceptionally corny vocals, and the songwriting and performances aren't really enough to make up for it. American High in particular is extremely embarrassing, but this whole album is pretty trash if you ask me. It is going to meh. I could enjoy the Burning Red even though it was corny, this one not so much. Then we have Power Man 5000 with Anyone for Doomsday.
Can't stop doing the monkey!
A fun follow-up continuing with the ideas of the already headbang-worthy Tonight the Stars Revolt. Great opener in Danger Is Go, and then Bombshell is another super hype single. Plenty of fun songs here, giving that sort of evil sci-fi dance party aesthetic like The End of Everything. Far from perfect, and it jumps the shark on occasion, but overall, it's a blast, no pun intended. It is going to great tier. Then we have Seven Dust with Animosity. This album was actually my first introduction to the band and one that I listened to a lot back in the day. There's some really high points like the opener, TOAB, which is one of my all-time favorite jams from them with those rapid-fire vocals. Crucified does a great job of balancing a lot of different elements and maintaining great rhythms and groove. Trust is a solid softer track. Praise, Shine, Beautiful, and Redefine are also highlights, and Angel Sun is a strong closer, though I like the straight-up version a little bit better, but this one is going to perfection. Then we have Il Nino with Revolution, Revolution. The debut album from this band featuring guitarist Mark Rizzo, who left to join Soulfly after this one, and another pretty consistently solid, if a little middle-of-the-pack album for me. There are some lesser moments like I Am Loco, and the lyrics can get pretty lame at times, but really that's true of most bands in the genre. For the most part, I'm down with this, especially tracks like God Save Us, If You Still Hate Me, What Comes Around, and Revolution. Killer tribal-sounding drumming, too. It is going to good tier. Then we got Alien Ant Farm with Anthology. I always have a really hard time calling this band nu metal, as stylistically this album is all over the place, with the closest comparison overall being Incubus, but I know if I don't mention it, somebody is going to complain. Fun single in Movies, even if it's more of like a pop-punk thing with borderline Rob Thomas vocals. Whisper feels like a Glassjaw track, and then of course you have the Michael Jackson Smooth Criminal cover. Good album, if pretty inconsistent in quality, one of the more diverse and interesting ones here, but not super representative of the genre, I would say. I'd almost call this like new rock, if that lands with anyone. You all let me know what you would call Alien Ant Farm. I'm put it at okay. Then we have American Head Charge with the War of Art. Absolutely love this album and considered it to be another one of the more underrated ones in the discussion of this genre. Killer fusion of nu metal with industrial elements, but with an extra heavy, pissed off spin. A violent reaction kicks in the door so hard, and then you've got more gym anthems for me here in Pushing the Envelope, Never Get Caught, and Seamless. Just So You Know made a killer single on the more melodic side, and despite being on the longer end of things with 16 tracks, I really enjoyed most of this. It's like pure undistilled nu metal angst, and for that it is going to fantastic. Then we have Edema with Edema. Another younger sibling situation popping up here, with this being the stepbrother of Jonathan Davis, who shows up on Do What You Want to Do. Very much remember listening to a lot of the moody Giving In and The Way You Like It, and also getting this CD from my grandma for Christmas. Kind of a mix of Korn and Linkin Park, but also with a little Limp Bizkit on the likes of Freaking Out. Definitely getting into some of the B-string talent here, and it falls off in the final third, I would say, but it's still pretty enjoyable, so it's going to good too. Next up is Scrape with New Killer America. I wasn't familiar with this group, and I wasn't impressed by this debut, unfortunately. Some half-decent crunch to the guitars, but not much substance or personality. Some comparisons maybe to like Filter. Waste and Isolated make for decent singles, and then Goodbye, I Know, and Broken Knees are also pretty solid. Rise feels like it's ripping off the chorus from Somebody Someone, but yeah, this one is going to okay. Then we have 40 Below Summer with Invitation to the Dance.
I'm at the end of my
Another one of my most underrated albums in the genre, and one that continues to be among my favorites to revisit. As corny as some of the lyrics here may be, their delivery is always fun and engaging, incorporating a number of different approaches that make tracks like Rope always interesting and even downright anthemic. The first half in particular is just loaded with jams, from opener We the People, to the moodier Wither Away, to the screamy hip-hop grooves of Step Into the Sideshow. Don't expect high poetry here, but most definitely a good time. Highly recommend it. I'm putting it at fantastic. Then we have Saliva with Every 6 Seconds.
click, click, boom. I'm coming down on the stereo, give me on the radio. Click, click, boom.
Click Click Boom is another one of those classic corny but mad fun tracks from the era, and I still have nostalgia for Your Disease. The rest is meh. Lackluster indeed, but certified platinum if you can believe it. Again, these were interesting times. I always like looking at the charts during this era just to see what wild stuff was making it on there. It's so different from now. But anyways, yeah, this one's going to meh. Then we have POD with Satellite. Alive and Youth of the Nation were more songs you could not avoid on the radio when they were dropped, but you almost never hear now. I still enjoy those songs, especially the drumming on the latter. I kind of got sick of them because they were so overplayed back in the day, but now that it's had some time away from it, it's like, oh yeah, these are great tracks, well written. I'd say again, the second half isn't nearly as strong as the first, but it's still a stronger start to finish listen than a lot of the lower albums here, so it still managed to claw out great. Then we have Stained with Break the Cycle. Their most well-received and selling album, and their best, in my opinion. Like it or not, this album was a force to be reckoned with when it dropped, hitting #1 on Billboard and going 5 times platinum. And frankly, I still enjoy its very specific depressive atmosphere that I've never heard exactly anywhere else. Open Your Eyes, Fade, It's Been a While, Can't Believe, all great if at the time incredibly kind of overplayed tracks. But I'd say it's just a perfectly crafted album that hit the radio at just the right time and has just the right mix of nu metal with kind of like butt rock and alternative rock and things like that. I love it. I think it deserves to be at perfection. It is kind of a landmark album. Then we have Drowning Pool with Sinner. Quite a string of bangers here in Sinner, Tear Away, and of course Bodies. Things get a little bit more touch and go after that, unfortunately. Nothing terrible, but a lot of comparatively mid songs that you'll instantly forget a few minutes later. And it's sad because there's a lot of potential here. If all the songs were as good as the first 3, this would be much higher, and I'm curious what another album with Dave on vocals would have been like. Rest in peace to him. This album's going to okay, but I'd put it at like the top of okay. Then we have Fear Factory with Digimortal. Another band taking a quick detour into the genre for an album that gets joked about a lot, but I still enjoy quite a bit. It also led to their first breakup, with Dino leaving on guitar for some time afterwards. I love Lynchpin. It's honestly one of my favorites, right up there alongside Replica. Also a big fan of What Will I Become, Damaged, No One in the title track. I'll admit that Back the Fuck Up with Be Real is maybe a bridge too far, but hey, there are far worse things out there, and I still bang my head to that track, and the rest of the album is sick, even if you kind of remove it from the equation. So I put this at fantastic. Then we have Dope with Life. Another album I got for Christmas that year, this one I think from my aunt. I spun it plenty of times back then, but I think this one lacks some of what I liked about the debut. The cringe elements feel like they have increased, and unfortunately with these slight changes in vocals and production, the same level of grit that made it work last time just isn't really there anymore. The guitars and samples still say We Love Ministry, but unfortunately the poppier songwriting on tracks like Now or Never say the label wants more radio airplay. So yeah, this one ended up at meh. Then we have Chimera with Pass Out of Existence.
I think I saw them open for Slipknot with Fear Factory on this album cycle, and they were pretty sick. Love the industrial elements, and another vocal performance that stands apart on this list in some ways. Let Go is a headbanger. Dead Inside and Severed I played over and over again on a burned compilation disc I made. A little inconsistent, but still a higher pick for me here. It is going to great tier. Then we have Réveillé with Bleed the Sky. At least I think that's how you pronounce it. It's actually a French word that roughly translates to wake up. We actually didn't cover this band's debut on the previous list, but we're getting them in here now with their second and final record. Big emphasis on rap and hip-hop elements, as you can hear from the admittedly catchy single What You Got. Comparisons here to Head PE, Linkin Park, Primer 55, and Limp Bizkit. Another reason I don't know how to pronounce the name is I'd actually never listened to this record or any other records prior to this list, and was surprised how much fun I had with it. Just really the whole essence of the genre coming through. Nothing amazing, but just infectious and well-produced music with very funky bass work. It landed at good tier. And then, of course, we have Slipknot with Iowa. Expectations were high after just how explosive the debut was. Unfortunately, they delivered with another classic here. People Equals Shit, Disaster Piece, My Plague, Everything Ends, the Heretic Anthem. Once more, Left Behind getting some pretty regular radio rotation with the perfect balance of scream-along hooks and intensity. And really just more great scream-along moments in general with more memorable hooks too. I can see why so many people name this their favorite album from them. Personally, I think I prefer the debut slightly over this one, but it's very close. And also, to the people who say that Slipknot is not new metal, I just do not understand that. They're literally like one of the big four. They've got the DJ, they've got the kind of like rapping hip-hop elements, at least in their earlier stuff. They've got the down-tuned guitars, they've got the focus on groove and rhythm, like it's all there. Like it just seems like cope to me from people who like want to say they don't like new metal, but they like Slipknot or whatever. But they are most definitely new metal. Anyways, we all know where this is going. It's going to Perfection, probably my favorite of this entire list.
Yeah, I feel like the only commonality was like, I feel everyone was just really trying to be original or trying to put a niche. Like, I could feel that, bro. Like, it was just like that hunger to just like be
different.
Today we are ranking new metal albums from 2002, starting with Coal Chamber with Dark Days. Now, while this album was a disappointment to me back in the day, considering the lineup changes and that it signaled the end of the band at the time, in retrospect, it may just be their best album front to back. Fiend is a killer opener that never fails to get me banging my head and screaming along, and same goes for Something Told Me. Then you have Glow, Watershed, Dark Days, and even the Flood cover Rowboat is extremely fun. It also just feels like the perfect transition towards the sound of the Devil Driver debut that would come not long after. Honestly, easily one of the best new metal albums of this year, because frankly, it's not the greatest year, especially coming off of 2000, 2001, which were pretty much unbeatable, if you ask me. But next up, we have Papa Roach with Love, Hate, Tragedy. Now talk about a 180 in tone from Infest. Gone are the dark, brooding, and maybe admittedly overly angsty elements in favor of something that just feels so bright and corny as a result with tracks like She Loves Me Not. They weren't even really new metal at this point, it was just rock, and this was at a time where there were just still far better rock albums to go around, from Songs of the Deaf to Audioslave. And I'll say more on this later, but this was a time where a lot of bands were kind of going butt rock, which isn't even really an insult for me. I think it was a great time for radio. I love a lot of those butt rock bands, but I'm not going to include those here. Like, for instance, kind of honorable mentions, Dry Cell, Chevelle, whose album I absolutely love this year, 36 Crazy Fist, and of course, Trapped, whose album I do not care for. None of those are going to be on this list because I just consider them to be more rock albums. But Papa Roach still included because big name in the genre.
I'm hypocritical. What'd you say?
Anyways, the other single, Time and Time Again, didn't do it for me either. It just kind of feels like a case of the band getting too big too fast, and the side effect of that can often be losing the angst and genuineness that got them there. This feels like a studio assembly line album to me, right from the opening David Lee Roth yeah of M80. But from a business standpoint though, I get it. This was very much the way the wind was blowing in terms of what was doing well on the radio, and they sold 500,000 copies in the first 2 months, and it was certified gold, so what the hell do I know, right? But for me personally, in terms of enjoyment, it's just going to okay. Next up, we have Third Strike with Lost Angel. I have been waiting to include this album on any video on the channel, really, because it is so underrated, and unfortunately to the point that I often forget about it frequently, despite being a big fan of it. I had to add it to my Spotify list so that it's just constantly sitting there, so that anytime I open it, it was like a reminder of oh yeah, I need to make sure I don't forget to include that one. And this is the one and only album from this California band that mostly flew under the radar, but I guarantee listening to lead single No Light will inspire you to check it out, because it is a certified banger, and while the rest of the album never quite reaches the same level, it is consistently enjoyable and well worth a spin. I think it's one of the hidden gems of nu metal. I'd recommend this one about as much as 40 Below Summer I talked about. People asked on the previous list, what is that song? That sounds amazing. I hope that this is another one of those moments because this band slaps. I kind of wish they had gotten bigger than they did. So yeah, they're going to great tier, I would say. I wouldn't hype them up further than that, but it's worth your time. Then we have Skindred with Babylon. The debut album from this Welsh band, emphasizing elements of reggae in their music, and those rapid syncopated vocals really add a fresh flair that, in a decade already showing the decline of the genre, was a breath of fresh air. Some bangers on here too, like Nobody, Set It Off, and Bruises, that are extremely infectious, but unfortunately some of the more upbeat stuff just isn't as engaging to me. Still more points for feeling more unique and more enjoyable too, I would say, than a lot of other albums here. So overall, I would actually put this one at fantastic. I know I feel like I raved more about Third Strike than this one, so it almost feels like they should be reversed, but sometimes that happens. It's about the whole experience, though. Next up is Switched with Subject to Change. The debut full-length from this Cleveland band, and while so many were shedding a lot of their metal elements, these guys still seem to understand the assignment. There are some more rock-oriented moments here, but it's still got more than enough of the heavy groove and screaming to warrant being called nu metal, I would say. Now, is it amazing? Not really, but there's enough in here that some of these songs get me bobbing my head. Worth checking out, I would say, especially if you haven't before. Notably, Bradley Koschmidt, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, formerly of Nonpoint, plays guitar, and Chad, oh good lord, Chad Sesliga of Breaking Benjamin and Black Label Society provides drums on this album. I'm going to put it at good tier. Alright, back to bigger names. We have System of a Down with Steal This Album. Now, another one that's not without its high points, like Inner Vision, Boom, and IEAIAO, but really, this is a glorified B-sides album of leftovers from Toxicity. That is a fact. Like they have even said, that's basically what happened here. And I'd say it shows. 16 tracks that feel very much slapped together with no clear flow, and few of which are anywhere close to the same quality of their predecessor. But I get that is not necessarily a popular opinion. I know plenty of other people, especially in the fandom, that really love this album. I even know people who say it's their favorite, and that is fine. This is just my opinion. But as a huge System of a Down fan at the time, as these albums were coming out, I was really looking forward to this, and this ended up being another moment where I was really disappointed, and I kind of started to lose interest around this point. So give me the albums before this, definitely, like especially the self-titled and Toxicity, but also the albums after, I would say, are better. This is my least favorite System of a Down album. That said, it's still solid, and it's still better than a lot of the stuff on this list, so I will grant it great tier. Then we have OTEP with Save Us Tra. Many of you may have caught my review of this band's latest covers album, and one that I called one of the worst albums I've ever heard, and I still stand by that. If you have not checked out that video, I highly encourage it because I had a lot of fun making it. It almost made itself.
On Twitter, the news every day I am. I keep it hundo and now I'm banned.
Imagine being 43 and thinking, oh yeah, that's fire. Now, if I were to recommend a single album, though, from this train wreck of a band, it would be this one, as I did enjoy it at the time, and it's not without its higher points. That said, going back to it now, a lot of the seeds for their later cringeworthy elements are already being sown here, right from the corny intro. Also, Otep's voice has always been whiny and annoying. She's got some good deeper growls here and there, but everything else is just so obnoxious, so... It's not the worst thing, but it's not great either. I'm putting it at okay. We also have Taproot with Welcome. This one also stung a lot, as I consider Taproot to be one of the first bands that felt like I was in a small exclusive club enjoying. And again, coming off of a career high debut in Gift, I was like really pumped for this. But when they dropped Poem as the single, I was just not really into it. I know some people love that song, and it is one of their biggest singles, maybe their biggest. I'm just not enjoying it. Like, I don't care for it. I find it pretty annoying, and I didn't like the direction that they were going. It all just felt less dark and heavy, instead just more kind of tailored for general rock radio audiences. Again, that might have been like pushed by the studio on some level. Maybe I'm just speculating. Maybe it was just the band's decision. I don't know that for a fact, but it just further confirmed listening to the full album that it just wasn't really for me and still isn't for me. Gift, I think, is just all you really need from this band personally. Listening to the new one, too, just kind of made me feel sad because I love Gift. I think it is like the gem of new metal in many ways, but I'm going to go ahead and put this one at good tier. I still think it's at least better than these. We have Mudvayne with The End of All Things to Come. This album is fine and easily second best to LD50, but to me, if LD50 is like a 9 or a 10 even, this is like kind of like an 8, maybe. It's a few steps down from that one, not even just one. Not Falling is really the only track I go back to regularly, and that one holds up to the promise of the debut, but nothing else quite does for me here. Just far less memorable songs, cheesier lyrics, and more streamlined songwriting, I think, was the most disappointing factor, because it doesn't have the more kind of technical aspects and experimental vision of the debut. Even World So Cold is just kind of okay as another single. Again, that said, though, I think it's just better than a lot of stuff here. So it's going to Fantastic, which again, after that glowing review, may feel a little bit weird, but frankly, again, I just think 2002 was not an ideal year for this genre. We also have Disturbed with Believe. I get a lot of people saying that this is the album where they really got good, but honestly, I dislike this one even more than the much beloved debut, which is many hot takes there. I just think this is another supremely overrated album, and I remember what turned me off to begin with when it was coming out was the single Prayer and that kind of like Livin' La Vida Loca melody that's woven into there. Liberate and Remember are fine singles, but even those I won't remember in like 24 hours, and the deeper cuts are even more forgettable. Rise is also kind of okay. Even after years of re-listens, nothing really sticks with me in a particularly meaningful way. But that said, it's, again, still better than some of the listens on this list, but not many. I would put it at good tier. We also have Nonpoint with Development. Another one I really only include in name only, as there's virtually nothing new metal about this one, but it is, again, one of the bigger names that's sort of important. Much like Papa Roach, they went into a much more rock-oriented direction, but even on that front, these songs just strike me as really bland and boring. Again, if you really want a good modern rock album from this year with a twinge of that old new metal spirit, I would definitely go with Chevelle's Wonder What's Next. Fantastic record. I recall the next album from Nonpoint being a bit better, but we'll get to that when we get to that, if we get to that. But I'm going to put this one at okay. We also have Linkin Park with Reanimation. Now, I don't normally include remix albums, but this one is fairly important, I would say. And as far as those albums go, it is quite good. Lots of very strong and often interesting reimaginings of songs off of Hybrid Theory. Some are just a bit of a twist on the original, and others become almost unrecognizable, and all of them are really enjoyable. I also previously said I forgot that Stephen Richards of Taproot shows up on track 6 in addition to the many great hip-hop guests all over this record. Solid listen. I would put it at great tier. We also have Soulfly with 3.
Fighting for your soul, defending what is yours. Arm in arm, eye and eye and all.
Now, while this was another one that I was initially disappointed with at the time because I just was coming off of Soulfly and Primitive, and I think those albums are fantastic, and I don't think this one is as good. But it has grown on me over the years. Downstroy is a decent opener. Seek and Strike is a fine single. Last of the Mohicans and Call to Arms are pretty fun. Brazil appropriately leans back into the Portuguese and tribal elements, as do the various instrumentals at the end, though I think that these would have been better, more scattered throughout the runtime. The drumming in general consistently continues to be one of my favorite elements, and again, out of this year, I would put it at fantastic and pretty high up at that. We also have Down the Sun with Down the Sun. Another one-and-done band. This one formed originally in Kansas City, Missouri, and at one point signed to Slipknot's short-lived Maggot Core label. To my understanding, they're the only band that was ever signed to that label. I'd probably most closely compare their sound to American Head Charge, but not quite as heavy or consistently engaging. Still some fun enough head bob-inducing songs, though, like We All Die, I Confide, and the at times Static X-coded Enslaved. But then the occasional not-so-great moment, too, like Pitiful. Enjoyable enough. I would put this one at great tier. There's also 5.0 with Untitled. This band formed not far from my old stomping grounds in Joliet, Illinois, also a single album crew. Kind of feels, again, like American Head Charge, but crossbred with, like, Faith No More. Some good elements, and nothing bad here, but also pretty meandering and forgettable. About, like, halfway through the album, I was sort of losing some interest, but again, I'd say it's better than some here, so I would put this one at good. We also have Crazy Town with Dark Horse.
Feel there's something missing. Sometimes I hate that chaos surrounds me.
Now, Butterfly became such a meme that I didn't even realize this group had any other albums besides the debut at this point. Very little to say about this one either, as it also goes in a more modern rock direction, and the results are not at all interesting in any way or stretch. Even the single Drowning feels like a third-rate attempt at making a Linkin Park song. Not really worth your time if you ask me. Like, at least the debut has some meme-worthy elements, has some kind of like, yeah, this is fun even though I know it's stupid kind of elements to it, but I would frankly just say it's bad. Just a reminder, if you made it this far, to like the video or dislike it if you're like pissed off. I know new metal fans get really up in arms sometimes, but it is what it is. And feel free to comment below your own rankings, because yours are just as valid as mine. Share where you agree, share where you disagree. But moving to our final album, it is of course Korn with Untouchables. Now, it wasn't until I put this list together and looked at it in its totality that I realized that 2002 was just kind of the year of disappointments for me, for many of my favorite nu metal bands coming off of, again, their career highs at the time. Like, the years prior to this were just like the golden era, and then this is where I started to kind of lose interest and move on to especially a lot of metalcore and melodic death metal, and then death metal and black metal and all that stuff down the line from there. But I guess it was kind of a necessary moment for my metal development, so to speak. But also albums that later, circling back to, I realized I enjoy them more than I gave them credit for at the time. Now, speaking of which, Issues continues to be one of my favorite albums, but this one, Untouchables, especially for all the hype and the production cost price tag, just fell short of my expectations. It's still in the upper tier of Korn's discography and easily one of their best on this relative list. It's also still part of the kind of like golden era Korn albums, I would say, and it's right after that quality really declined, and this is one that still maintained at least some of that stuff. I actually saw them on tour with this album,
and it was one of my first concerts. I believe my first metal concert, come to think of it, at the, it was at the Allstate Arena, or it may still have been called the Rosemont Horizon. But anyways, usual solid singles here, including Here to Stay and Thoughtless, and it makes for a relatively consistent listen front to back. Also, just always fun to see Jesse from Breaking Bad in his early days in that music video. But yeah, I would say it's, of this year, one of the best, maybe the best. I actually kind of enjoy the Cold Chamber album a little bit more front to back, I think. But yeah, that is my 2002 list. Today, guys, we are ranking new metal albums from 2003, and we're going to start with Linkin Park with Meteora. Now, as I've said a million times before, I'm a hybrid theory guy, but this is easily second place, and on this list, standing high above the rest. Some real classics here, like Somewhere I Belong, Faint, Numb, From the Inside, and of course, Breaking the Habit, and just a consistently enjoyable listen overall. I'd go so far as to say that this is one of the last truly great pure representations of the genre, so it is going to best. Next up is Edema with Unstable. This band, featuring Jonathan Davis's half-brother, had a pretty short shelf life, but I enjoyed the self-title well enough. But unfortunately, from the first track of this one, it's clear that they had already kind of lost what they had going for them. It trades the darker vibe for what almost feels like a corny hair metal energy, minus the good guitar riffs. Just absolutely generic, corny trash. Nothing even remotely close to something like Giving In on this one, so putting it at not good. We have Motograder with Motograder. The only 2000s full length from this California band's original run, notably with a pre-Five Finger Death Punch Ivan Moody on vocals, and as much as I generally dislike him and that band, I quite enjoyed this one. They can get super heavy with the likes of Suffocate, but then sound almost like Breaking Benjamin on others like Down and Wrong. Also, as corny as making every other track name backwards is, it's also the most nu metal thing ever, I would say. So I'm going to put this at fantastic. Then we have Il Nino with Confession. You might have actually recognized one of their tracks from that Freddy vs. Jason intro. What a great time to be alive in 2003. But anyways, album 2 from this Latin music-infused band. Love the very at times tribal-sounding drumming from Dave Chavarri on tracks like 2, Vaya Con Dios, and Cleansing, as well as the occasional Spanish guitar. Aru Luster of Machine Head also plays on this album. The clean vocals can be a little undercooked, but it's mostly a good time. I put it at good tier. We also have Spine Shank with Self-Destructive Pattern. The third and for a time final album from this industrialized nu metal crew. I was much more partial to The Height of Callousness back in the day, but this one is also pretty strong. Decent opener in violent mood swings, followed by the also banging Slavery, and Smothered was even nominated for a Grammy for Best Metal Performance. The clean vocal moments again feel a little half-baked in comparison to the angrier parts, Forgotten being the main offender, but overall, a pretty strong listen. I'm going to put it at great tier. Then we have Stereo Mud with Every Given Moment. The second and final album from this band, with members from New York and Georgia. Solid grooves with a little funk energy, but ultimately a little too much rock and not enough metal for my taste. Sounds to me like if Snot tried to go more mainstream, radio-friendly. Pretty boring. Define This and Drop Down are solid enough songs, so I'm going to put this one at okay. All right, we have Head PE with Blackout. The third and one of my personal favorite albums from this California crew, once more fusing rap, funk, reggae, hardcore, and metal. And if you dig their music but hate the cringy lyrics, this one has maybe the least of that, though it still shows up on some tracks like Crazy Life. But then again, that's one of my favorite songs to jam out to on this album. The title track is also possibly the most infectious thing that they've ever written, but I enjoyed the whole record start to finish, right down to the more chill stuff. I'm going to put this at best. Sad that they are now making really, really terrible cover albums. But moving on, we have 40 Below Summer with The Morning After. Wild that these guys just dropped their first new single in almost 20 years, the same day that I put up the 2002 video. That was not on my bingo card, but unfortunately, this album was a huge disappointment to me. The most exciting elements that made Invitation to the Dance such a thrill are largely gone here in favor of something much more middle of the road. That said, it still has some fun moments like Taxi Cab Confession. It's still solid enough overall, it's just kind of mopey and not nearly as interesting, so I put it at good tier. Then there's POD with Payable on Death. First album with Living Sacrifice's Jason Truby on guitars, replacing co-founder Marcos Curiel, and that seems like it should be a good thing, potentially, because I love Living Sacrifice, but man, coming off of the inescapable monolith that was Satellite in 2001, this comparatively seemed to release to a bit of a whimper. They ditched most of the new metal elements, which could be okay, but even the singles are just boring. Like Will You or Change the World can't hold a candle to something in the same ballpark as Youth of the Nation. I don't even remember these songs playing at all at the time. Were they even on the radio? And even right now, after having re-listened to the album, I can't remember a damn note from any of those songs.
It's all big nothing.
I don't know what happened, but it was like overnight these guys went from one of the biggest bands on the radio to a footnote from this point on. So it is going to not good. We also have Skillet with Collide. Debatable including this album at all, as it's mostly kind of butt rock, but there are probably enough elements to warrant someone complaining if it wasn't on here. That said, I don't care much for it. It's not terrible, but it's not particularly great either. It'll occasionally get my foot tapping. I'm going to put it at okay. Then we have Mushroom Head with 13. Their fourth album, but also the one that was their breakout, and definitely an improvement across the board from the albums that came before, I would say. I don't really consider them to be a nu metal band, going for more kind of like Faith No More energy, but they were constantly being brought up in the same conversations at this time, and enough of the elements are present on this album for it to be relevant at least. Sun Doesn't Rise feels straight off of Angel Dust, some pretty catchy and heavy moments, plenty of talent on display, but at times a little bit messy and bloated when it comes to overall songwriting and execution. I will say it has grown on me over time. I'm going to put it at great tier. Then we have Cell Dweller with Cell Dweller.
Inside this fantasy, it seems so real to me.
Pretty ambitious double album for a debut from this solo musician who I think largely flew under my radar. I'm glad for the audience, again, recommending something to me that I hadn't heard yet. Quite a bit going on here, from more electronically focused moments like Frozen, reminding me of Orgy, while some of the more rock-oriented songs give kind of Linkin Park and Incubus energy, among other things. Maybe a little Filter in there as well. Whatever you call it, I enjoyed it quite a bit, especially for something that's over 70 minutes long from a brand new act at the time. I'm putting it at fantastic. Though we have plenty more albums to go, but if you're enjoying the video so far, be sure to hit the like button. It really helps me out. And also help me out by commenting your own rankings of these albums, because as always, this is just my opinion and I want to hear yours as well. But next up, we have Devil Driver with Devil Driver. So make no mistake, Devil Driver is a groove metal band, but this debut still is kind of close enough to the Coal Chamber sound that I felt it warranted inclusion. Those chunky rhythmic riffs are still very much present, especially on I Dreamed I Died, What Does It Take to Be a Man, and Swinging the Dead, and then I Could Care Less feels like it would be right at home on chamber music. Whatever you call it, it is awesome. It still holds up. I absolutely adore this album. It's one of my favorites from them. It is going to best. And we have Nothing Face with Skeletons. The fourth and final LP from this Washington, D.C. band, and another popular one among fans that gets recommended to me quite a bit. Heavy opener with Machination, though the production, especially on the drums, feels a little lacking. Stylistically, the album is kind of all over the place, as from the band they were sort of
imploding at the time. Those were their words, but it leads to some enjoyable and interesting moments, from the catchier Beneath to heavier ones like Here Come the Butchers. So a bit inconsistent, but overall pretty enjoyable. I have a feeling there are people in the audience who would rank this a lot higher, but I am putting it at good tier. Then we have Dope with Group Therapy. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I owned a physical copy of this album, as it is one of the cringiest, corniest albums I have ever heard, but I was just such a fan of their records up until this point, so it seemed like a no-brainer to pre-order it at the time. At this point, most of the heavier industrial elements had been traded for just the most assembly line, pre-packaged, overproduced crap. It's catchy, but completely hollow, Bitch and Paranoia being prime examples of this. It is not good. It's not a good album.
Just put it in the trash.
Then we have Static X with Shadow Zone. Not one of my favorite Static X albums, but still a fun one. Destroy All is a good opener, but right from the top, it just feels like Wayne is going for more of that Jonathan Davis delivery. And as much as I love Korn, we have Korn. I want Static X. The industrial elements feel somewhat diluted by the increased melodic focus, as with Control It, which feels more like, again, kind of an orgy track with that synth line, while New Pain, The Only, and the title track feel straight up out of Untouchables era Korn. The only track I actively dislike, though, is So, I mean, it's a solid album, especially on this list. It's way better than many on here. It is going to fantastic. Then we have Sunk Loto with Between Birth and Death. Another name that passed me by mostly in high school, but this is the second and final album from this Australian band. A lot of bands calling it quits in this year, and yeah, this really, I said it in the 2000 video already, it's kind of, we're on the decline here. In terms of comparisons, the vocals remind me a bit of Papa Roach, but the guitars are a bit more Saliva. I never really disliked listening to this album, but I never loved it either. Again, kind of generic and meandering. Past Tense Existence is pretty solid. I'm gonna put this at okay. And then there's Twisted Method with Escape from Cape Coma. The only studio album from this Florida band who I vaguely remember, but again, at that point, I wasn't really paying much attention to nu metal. I had moved on to metalcore, melodic death metal, things of that nature. Honestly, though, pretty solid, just classic sounding, rap-infused, groovy, heavy nu metal the way God intended. Making songs like Fled and Reach a great jumping in place good time. Not as into the kind of mopier tracks on this one either. Unfortunately, guitarist Andrew Howard passed away in 2005. Also, notably, vocalist Derek Trebet is the younger brother of Mudvayne guitarist Greg Trebet and was featured on the reality show Daisy of Love.
You have been my rock star since you've gotten this house. I am so sorry, but I have to be true to my heart.
I just want you to be happy.
The 2000s, what a wild time. I'm putting this one at great tier. All right, then we have Deftones with Deftones. A somewhat divisive follow-up to one of my all-time favorite albums, White Pony, but still bringing something very interesting here. I love the opener Hexagram. Pins and Needles is up there, as well as is the drifty yet sharp Good Morning Beautiful. Really lots of great tracks on here and of a wide variety of different sounds. The only real dud here is probably Lucky You, which should have just stayed on the Matrix soundtrack. Personally, though, I was pretty disappointed with this album when it came out. Again, coming off of White Pony, which is still like one of my all-time favorite albums, but over the years I've very much come to appreciate it and its unique place in their discography. And also, again, looking at this list, it is one of the best and most unique things here, I would say. So it is going to best. Then we have Linnea 77 with Numb. I'd somewhat compare this Italian band to Head PE, as they seem to have similar influences from hardcore to funk and reggae. Now, are they as good as my favorite albums from Head PE? Personally, I don't think so, but that doesn't stop this album from having its own really fun moments, like the weird fusion of helmet riffs with brass instruments on Warhol, or the simple bass-heavy headbanging fun of Ants. It is going to great. We also have Element 80 with Element 80.
The third album from this Texas band, who actually put out their first album in nearly 20 years with 2023's AD. More kind of middle of the road and at times kind of milquetoast stuff here with some catchier moments sprinkled in like Broken Promises, Dummy Block, and Flatline. It's going to okay. Another big one here, we have Limp Bizkit with Results May Vary.
No one knows what it's like to be the bad man.
It's so fucking bleak, it's making me lightheaded.
Crazy that a band that was previously on an unstoppable tear pretty much killed their entire momentum with this album. Some will still defend this thing, and I know I'm gonna get those people in the comments. I always do this. This is like their best album, but if you ask me, it is dreadfully boring, and the last thing I want from my Turn Off Your Brain and Headbang band is to get so melodic and serious. You get one genuinely great track in Gimme the Mic, but the rest is just such a dull slog through Fred Durst whining, and especially the corny cover of The Who's Behind Blue Eyes, which some people, again, for some reason, absolutely love, but I think it's atrocious. I attribute most of the problems to the departure of vocalist Wes Borland. They are really kind of a package deal when it comes to the glue that makes this all strangely work. But yeah, it's not good. By the way, Goon Squad TV, which is a channel that like randomly popped up in my feed at one point, they've been making some really great like retrospectives on bad albums. They call it like Album Atrocities is the series, and they made a video on this one that I highly recommend.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
But moving on, we have Seven Dust with Seasons.
If I can feel
Now, many would disagree with me on this one as well, as they made very vocal when I did my Seven Dust discography tier list, but I think this is the beginning of a decline for this band as well. They lose a lot of the heaviness that I love so much about Animosity and Home. Lay John still continues to sound amazing as always, and there are still some solid jams like Enemy in particular. Love that step up to me, step up to me. But outside of that, it's just a disappointment. It's still better than some of the other albums on here. Again, like that strong vocal performance kind of carries it, but I would much rather go with their earlier stuff. It's going to good. Then we have Korn with Take a Look in the Mirror. Now, I tend to be pretty hard on most post-issues Korn albums, but this one is actually still quite good overall. First of all, still some fantastic headbanger singles in Right Now and Did My Time, the latter being my personal favorite on here, but then most of the deeper cuts are pretty solid too, if feeling at times like slightly lesser Xeroxes of previous material. So even though it's not among my favorite Korn albums of the albums here, I'm much more likely to go back to this one for repeat listens than many of the ones down here. So it is going to fantastic. And then we have Chimera with The Impossibility of Reason. Another groove metal band, but once more I'd say that their first two albums still fit the new metal bill. After this, I definitely wouldn't include anything on one of these lists. I miss some of the more electronic flourishes of the debut, but those drop C riffs will not be denied on this one. Killer standouts here in The Cleansing, the more melodic Down Again, The Dehumanizing Process, and Pure Hatred. Great gateway album from new metal to like even thrash and groove metal, I would say. I am putting this one all the way up at best.
Right now, I'm dangerous. Yeah, that's a cool... Fred, let's do that again, but can you not do that like Adam Sandler voice thing? All right, I'll try. Because right now, I'm dangerous.
Today we are ranking new metal albums from 2004, starting with Soulfly with Prophecy.
I see the red sea parting from domain.
Big fan of these guys and was surprised at how good Totem came out a few years ago. Title track is a solid opener, banger drums, Max coming in with full fury. Living Sacrifice is a rager, bringing those wailing guitars. Love the big solo on Execution style along with that great scream-along chorus. The drummer on this album and Primitive actually worked at my local guitar center, and I went to school with his half-sister. Very nice guy. David Ellefson of Megadeth actually did some of the bass along with the guy from Primer 55. Not as good as the first two albums, but definitely among the best here, maybe the best of what we have here actually, but we'll see. I'll let you decide too. Next up we have OTEP with House of Secrets. Slipknot riffs, but with the vocals replaced with pure cringe, unfortunately. OTEP is by far one of, if not the most annoying singers to come out of the scene, if you ask me. Hunter's here to do his co-anchor responsibilities, apparently. He's also upset that I took his chew away because it was too noisy. He'll get it back.
You monster!
Anyways, she ruins any possibility of enjoying any of this album. She's only gotten worse from here, too. So yeah, this one is going to not good. Next up is Kitty with Until the End. This is the only album with Jennifer Arroyo on bass, and it was written while the band was engaged in a lawsuit with Artemis Records. It's kind of a slow album with a lot of the songs feeling a little sleepy and dull to me. The only single from this album, Into the Darkness, is decent. Sugar and Burning Bridges are also solid. I'd say it lacks the charm or nostalgia of the first two without making any major improvements, but even though it's not one of their better albums, I think I'd rather listen to this than some of the others that we're going to get to. I am going to put this at good tier. I actually did a tier list of their albums not too long ago. Next up is Soil with Redefined. The third album from this band, kind of straddling between nu metal and post-grunge, definitely bringing the Jarl to this list. Hearing some songs that sound a bit like Mushroom Head, like Can You Heal Me, as well as a little bit of Alice in Chains influence, though nowhere near that level. In fact, I don't think it's particularly good and very forgettable. Not awful, just recycling a lot of ideas at this point without adding anything of note, but this is going to okay. Next up, we have Head PE with Only in America.
You maggots ought to know that you can't control me. This is punk rock, homie. I'm a spectacle. Come on. But you don't hear me now. I don't give a fuck.
Really leaning back into the trend of cringe lyrics that will definitely make Gen Z blush. Again, I grew up on 90s rap, so I still enjoy plenty of albums using some of the outdated words and tropes here, like Eminem's early work, but this is on a completely different level when it comes to all that. That said, the music is often catchy as hell, like lots of great grooves, and while the choruses are equally brain dead, I always find myself singing along. I just can't help it. It's kind of like Limp Bizkit, except way worse. On here, I'd actually say it's still worthy of great tier. But yeah, it's kind of like watching a B horror movie. Like, I was laughing out loud, so in a way, it brought me more joy than anything else on this list, potentially. Just don't listen to it anywhere, you might get canceled. Next up, we have Grade 8 with Resurrection. The third and final album from this New Jersey band. The riffs are decent, if kind of generic, but the vocals are like if the guy from Clutch had the same problem that RFK does. Frankly, that gets old pretty fast, but I guess it at least helps them stand out. It's an interesting listen. I'll give it that. I'm going to put it at okay. Then we have Try Kill Logic with The Dead and the Dreaming. Now, I enjoy this New York band's debut quite a bit, but this follow-up is another fall-off on this list, if you ask me. Less memorable songs, crummy production. For some reason, I don't even see it included for the genre in the list I was working off of. An audience member had to remind me. That said, there are decent moments, and it's never bad. Like, Paper Tiger is a decent single, and Buckles goes pretty hard. Living Witness and As Thick as Thieves are also pretty decent. Not the worst thing here. I wouldn't hate re-listening to it. The commenters. Get up here. I'm gonna put it at good tier. Next up is Orgy with Punk Static Paranoia. I remember my friend's girlfriend bought this without hearing any of the songs, against all of my warnings, just because she was such a big fan of their previous albums. We pushed play and instant regret was the instant regret was palpable in that car. I already didn't care that much for the second album, but this was the death spiral from the top to the bottom in just a few short years. It's not as bad as OTEP, but it's definitely not particularly good. Then we have Flaw with Endangered Species. The second album from this Kentucky band, and the last until 2016. And honestly, one of the few bands on this list who seem to still remember The Assignment and bring that classic nu metal sound with opener Medicate. Also enjoy You've Changed and Final Cry on the heavier side. Unfortunately, once more between those, there's a lot of kind of mopier, sleepier stuff that just doesn't appeal much to me. Turn the Tables is pretty good, though. I'm gonna put this at good tier if Hunter will let me. Next up is Eths with Soma. Now, I actually didn't become aware of this French band until 2016's Anka, which was a banger. And circling back, this is also quite good. I always dig a band that screams in their native language. The songwriting is both headbangable and dynamic, and the production is great. Lots of awesome textured drumming and fun bass work as well. Just an all-around solid album from a band that deserves more recognition, and for my money, topped most other stuff in a pretty weak year. And if you want a better alternative with a female vocalist to the kind of milquetoast Kitty record, or again, God forbid, that OTEP record, this is well above that. I'm actually going to put it at best. Next is Addiction Crew with Break In Life. Now, alternatively, I almost felt bad adding this Italian band to the list, as they were almost spared the blade until a commenter put them on my radar. I'm willing to bet many like myself would have just gone on never even knowing that they existed, but now I just know them as another really bad example of the genre. I checked out the song Break In first, assuming the top result would at least be their best foot forward. I often use cringe as kind of a hyperbolic catch-all term, but in this case, I actually did physically cringe in embarrassment for them throughout the duration, and single What About isn't any better. What a waste of having both a female and male vocalist. Her voice is pretty solid too, but yeah, this is just clearly not good. Reminder, if you're enjoying the video, hit the like button, and as always, put your own rankings down below. Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? This is all just my opinion. But moving on, we have Crossfade with Crossfade. Okay, we are really scraping the bottom of the barrel here, as I cannot be clear enough that Crossfade is just basically a straight-up butt rock band. If they're new metal, then so are like Breaking Benjamin and Nickelback. I think the only moments I would label as new metal here are Death Trendsetter, Disco, and maybe No Giving Up. But that said, it's a fairly catchy and enjoyable album, and Cold never fails to put a smile on my face. Like, I sing every word to that one. Rare use of restraint here, too, at just 34 minutes long. I'm gonna go ahead and put it at great tier. Next up is Scrape with Up the Dose. The second and final album from this Florida band, and another leaning more into the rock side of things. Not a lot of screaming, nothing in the way of hip-hop influence. There are some kind of Deftones-y moments like The Ocean. File alongside the others here that are decently enjoyable, but ultimately pretty forgettable. I'm going to put this one at okay. Next up is Damage Plan with Newfound Power. The only album from this band featuring Dimebag and Vinny from Pantera. Sadly, this was the band that Dimebag was performing with when he was killed on stage. This was a big album when I was finishing high school, but believe it or not, this was my first time listening to it all the way through. It just didn't appeal to me at the time, and 2004 was a big year for metalcore. Like, maybe if y'all want me to, I would love to do some metalcore rankings by year, but I know some people would really not want that too. Me personally, I'm a metalcore connoisseur. Anyways, really more of a mix of new metal with groove metal here. Plenty of banger moments, but also some I'm not so fond of, like the singing on Save Me, Crawl, or especially Blink of an Eye. Guest appearances here too from Corey Taylor and Zakk Wylde. It's solid enough, but I stand by my original decision to ignore it. I am going to put it at good tier. Some may call that sacrilege, but that's just how I feel. Then we have Nemec with the Audio Injected Soul. Another album I wasn't too familiar with, but this was surprisingly quite enjoyable. So that's another fun reason for doing these lists, is I get to discover new things from you all, too. This is the Dutch band's second album, and it's got some infectious heavy tunes like Door 2.12, Deathbox, Mindsaver, and at times very Meshuggah-esque The Silver Drop. Some of the riffs, too, like on Illuminate, actually remind me a bit of Soilwork. I am going to put this one at best tier. Again, if Hunter stops banging my wrist here, we are almost done, so you can have your choo-choo back. God, I didn't even get it to the right level. All right, there it is. Next up is Nonpoint with Recoil. This Florida band also further evolving in a more rock direction on their third record, and most of it is kind of in one ear, out the other with me. Lots of really trite, bland choruses with dull songwriting. That said, Rabia is a slapper. Easily my favorite song from them in general, and I always make sure it ends up in my new metal playlist. Outside of that, though, this doesn't have a ton to offer me, and unlike some of my friends, I hated their cover of In the Air Tonight. Give me the Phil Collins version and put this one back, please. Overall, I'm going to put this at okay. Then we have Papa Roach with Getting Away with Murder. I'm really rational, so Again, they weren't new metal at all at this point, if you ask me, but it's slim pickings this year, so whatever. They're a big name in the genre, so here they are. This just feels more like a Fall Out Boy album in terms of sound. I'm not even sure what exactly it is that I hate so much about this sound, but it's just like nails on a chalkboard to me. I am a certified Papa Roach hater, except for Infest. I'm gonna put this at not good. Then there's Atom Ship with The Crash of 47. The audience kind of pushed this one on me, even though I consider this also to be more kind of like post-grunge and alt-metal in the vein of like 10 Years or also Chevelle, both of which I left off. Really, the only remotely new metal track here in my mind is Friends, but when it came down to it, I figured it's not all that far off from what that Flaw album is doing, and I think that this actually does that sound much better. It's also their one and only album, so I'll give them their due. I enjoyed it. I'm gonna put it at great tier. Next up is Apartment 26 with Music for the Massive. I mentioned enjoying elements of this UK band's 2000 album Hallucinating, but right from the weird use of swing music on opener Give Me More, I was already kind of dreading going forward on this one. Thankfully, there are also better songs here too. 88 is genuinely pretty catchy. It's another one that also feels weird to even call new metal. Frequently, I wouldn't even call it metal at all, but it made the list largely based on songs like New Year's Resolution. Another one that's at least interesting, and I would like maybe go back to it to see if elements grow on me, so I put it at good tier. Then there's Drowning Pool with Desensitized. Jason Jones on vocals, and I just stopped caring about them at this point. It's listenable and has some moderately fun tracks like Forget, Hate, and Cast Me Aside. I was listening to this in my car and my wife said it sounds like Godsmack, so I guess you could say that they also went full boat rock, but they're actually still new metal here. They kind of strike a balance. I'm gonna put it at okay tier. We also have 36 Crazy Fists with A Snow-Capped Romance. So a lot of people were mad that I didn't include Bitterness the Star in the 2002 list, but since 2004 is again kind of a light year, I will include them here. I still maintain though that there is more kind of like alternative and at this point also some metalcore DNA going on here. Regardless, fun album. At the end of August is a great opener that brings great elements from all of these genres. Also did Kanai with Nothing Underneath and Destroy the Map with Wraith on Clay. Lots of killer bass work on top of the great riffs and vocals. I am actually going to put this at best tier. Quick shout out to the Jay-Z Linkin Park Collision Chorus collab. Pretty big deal crossover and honestly not bad, but it's not actually like a full LP, so I don't really include it on here unless it's that. But we are going to end here with Slipknot with Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses. Easily the biggest release from this year, and coming on the heels of the brutal and demented Iowa, you either found this to be pretty cheesy and cringy, or you considered it to be the moment that Slipknot really found their footing and reached a pivotal moment for their songwriting and sound. I'm still very much in the former category.
Let the hate flow through you.
As I've said many times before at this point, I remember spending weeks trying to convince myself that I liked this album, given what a super fan I was at the time. But even when I go back to it now, it just doesn't do much for me at all. I had a first day pre-order and I've long since traded this record away. Meanwhile, I still see people basically in tears listening to the likes of Duality, Vermilion, and Before I Forget. Different strokes is all, love what you love, but this was a major disappointment for me and the moment I stopped really being a hardcore fan of them. Still admittedly better than some other stuff here though, and it should be really telling for this year that an album I don't like very much and had all that to say about still is going to end up at great tier.
Gentlemen, it has been a privilege playing with you tonight.
Today we are ranking new metal albums from 2005, what I consider to be the final year of the golden era of the genre. And we are starting with Mudvayne with Lost and Found. Banger opener in Determined, almost on par with my favorite tracks on LD50, and the band stated that that was the energy they wanted to go back to with this one. Pushing Through is also very infectious, and some other killer singles here in Happy, Fall Into Sleep, and Forget to Remember, which ended up on the Saw 2 soundtrack. Some great bass and more technical approach to Just, very raw and heavy. I've actually come to like this one a lot more than The End of All Things to Come over the years. Things really went off a cliff after this one, if you ask me, so I'm hoping that the new record is more on par with this. I'm putting it at best. Next up is Dope with American Apathy.
When the sound goes boom, what you gonna do? Make a move.
How do you do, fellow kids?
After group therapy, I avoided Dope like the plague, so it wasn't until a long time later that I checked this one out, and it's still pretty lame, but I was surprised to hear them going back to more of the industrial sound of Felons and Revolutionaries. Tracks like Survive, No Way Out, and Bastard offer decent enough jams for headbanging, cringy lyrics, but the music is genuinely fun enough to make it a good time. There are definitely some moments, though, where it becomes, like, too stupid, so I'm gonna put this one at okay. We also have Disturbed with 10,000 Fists.
You walk out like a woman in suffering. You never know, you never know.
As I've said, despite being deep in with nu metal as a kid, I was never a big fan of this band, but that said, I can enjoy a song here and there like Deify, Decadence, Stricken, and Sons of Plunder. Also dig the bass on the moody Overburdened. The songwriting is also admittedly much better than plenty of others here. I can actually sit through this one start to finish without feeling the need to hit skip, so I will put it at fantastic. And note too that all these lists are like self-contained and relative to the other albums that we're talking about. I put this one a bit lower on its own like discography tier list, same with Mudvayne, but you get the idea. But moving on, we have Carnival with Themata. The debut album from this Australian band that is arguably more on the rock side of things, and get used to that because this again is like the twilight years. A lot of these bands were going butt rock. But anyways, bit of a wimpy start with COTE, but things pick up with the very catchy title track. Also enjoy the bouncy staccato vocals and wah-infused riffs of Lifelike, and Synops has more of like a Tool energy to it. Mixed bag with some higher points. Gonna put it at good tier. Then we have Taproot with Blue Sky Research. Now, if Welcome was a disappointment after how much I loved Gift, this was the nail in the coffin for me with this band. What an incredibly boring milquetoast excuse of a rock album. They abandoned pretty much any remaining nu metal aggression in favor of these mopey, forgettable songs. Not a hit among them. Feels like they tried and failed to be Chevelle. I put this one at bad, and it pains me to say that, because again, I love their debut, and as always, I'm interested to hear your own thoughts and rankings down below. I don't expect you to agree with me. That would be really boring anyways. Also, if you're enjoying the video so far, hit the like button. But next up, we have Korn with See You on the Other Side. The first album without Head and his guitar interplay with Monkey, that chemistry was a huge part of Korn's sound, so the change really kind of stands out to me on this one. Singles like Coming Undone continue to be very fun and infectious, but alternatively, Twisted Transistor jumps the shark a little bit, still catchy, but kind of lacking that like Korn edge. I outright dislike Politics, and Tearjerker feels a little out of place. Quite a few tracks here are actually pretty bland and forgettable, but offset by better ones like Tenor a Two-Way, Liar, and maybe Love Song. It doesn't hold a candle to their previous material. Again, I would rank it fairly low in their discography, but it's still a better listen than some things here. I didn't hate going back to it. It is going to great tier. Moving on to Static X with Start a War. The Enemy doesn't waste any time getting into it. Really love Wayne's very Wisconsin Death Trip delivery on the verses, but not always in love with the more melodic Korn-inspired choruses, although I could argue that they actually do Korn better than Korn did this year. Plenty of bangers here too, like the title track, love the driving industrial beats on Pieces and Otsego Amigo, the rocking groove and electronics of Dirt House and Skinny Man, the unique infusion of brass instruments of I Want to Fucking Break It. Also, one of the more focused albums here at just 40 minutes and pretty consistent throughout. Again, it's not one of their best, I would say, but it's definitely one of the better ones here, and I was banging my head. It is going to best. And we have Seven Dust with Next. Now, the band said that they felt studio pressure on this one to follow up Seasons, and that is just rarely a recipe for success, I would say. Hero is a decent opener, calling more back to the stuff on Animosity. Not great, but decent. Ugly kicks off with some cool guitars, but kind of gets corny moving into the chorus, and Failure is just kind of blah. Lejeune sounding great as always, and while the heavier moments like Pieces and Silence are a welcome return, I wouldn't say they hit as hard as they did in their early material, but still, not a terrible album on this list. Is going to good tier. Next up is Clawfinger with Hate Yourself with Style.
Sit back and hate yourself with style.
This is the 5th album from this Swedish band, and man, seeing that first track title reminded me once more of what a different time the 2000s were. Like, I get that this track is supposed to be a pro-gay and anti-homophobia statement, but what a misguided approach to it. And really, this entire album is packed with this very, like, I'm so edgy, deal with it kind of energy on tracks like Dirty Lies. It's not particularly good, but at least it's not boring, which is more than I can say of some of these records. I was kind of laughing through a lot of this one. I'm gonna put it at okay. Then there's Despair's Ray with Call Set. The debut from this Japanese band, and it gives me some like orgy vibes at times with the electronic influences and general energy, but they also bring in strings and other eclectic instrumentation for more atmospheric elements. There's even some theremin on the super heavy In Vain. Also enjoy the synth parts on the almost danceable Forbidden. One of the more creative and interesting releases here, if a little inconsistent. I'm going to put it at great tier. We also have Blood Simple with A Cruel World. The first of just 2 albums from this short-lived band, but I gotta hand it to them for having one of the heavier openers here, going right for the throat with Straight Hate. More nice heavy grooves on Path to Prevail and Blood In, Blood Out, and then we have the more melodic elements fused into What If I Lost It. The softer songs aren't as good, but work well enough, and Chad Gray shows up on Falling Backwards. The album was also produced by Gigi Garth and features bassist Kyle Sanders, also of Hell Yeah, and currently Kerry King. I hadn't listened to this one before, but I quite enjoyed it, actually. One of the few diamonds in the rough in a death knell year again for this genre. I'm putting it at fantastic. We also have Trust Company with True Parallels. Their second album, and one I'd scarcely again call nu metal. There's some of that influence in tracks like Surfacing, but overall I'd say this has more in common with something like The Used more than Mudvayne. Solid listen with some catchy tracks. Of the more rock-oriented albums here, this is definitely a standout. I'm going to put it at great tier. Then we have Edema with Planets.
That sounds really boring.
Now, I was so disillusioned after the drop in quality of Unstable that I never listened to the albums that came after that, so the opening riff of Planets gave me some hope for the darker, heavier elements of the debut, but then the vocals come in and just shit all over that. There are some decent moments with the instrumentation here, like the bass on Enter the Cage, but as a whole, it's pretty shit, if you ask me. I did not enjoy this album. It's going to bad. We also have Il Nino with One Nation Underground.
He was a slave to the dirty system.
All's a sucker for use of tribal elements in this genre. They go so well with the natural groove of the music, bringing a lot of the Soulfly energy I was missing from Soulfly by this point in their career. Dig This War, My Resurrection, Turns to Grey, and Court Zone of Mine. Also enjoy the more melodic songwriting on De La Vida, their third album, and I think it's a big improvement from the last 2, even if I hear more people talk about those. I'm putting this one at fantastic. And we have Tractor Bowling with Cherta. The second album from this Russian band that sonically reminds me a bit of Kitty with some Evanescence mixed in. Lucine has a lovely voice and emphasizes her singing skills over screaming, and I feel like the instrumentation brings a lot of similar dynamic influences as Ginger does now. Also appreciate that the lyrics are in Russian, which never take away from tracks like Sneg being incredibly catchy. It drags a bit, and it would be nice to get a little heavier at times, but overall I like it. I'm going to put it at good tier. Then we have Non-Point with To The Pain.
I got a bullet with a name on it. Bullet with a name.
Fairly strong opener on Bullet with a Name on this fourth album with just a 1-year turnaround from the last one. More strong tracks in There's Going to Be a War, The Reckoning, and Code Red. Interesting use of brass on Explain Yourself. Inconsistent, but another case where I think this is an improvement from their previous, more popular albums that I don't really care much for. And based on the ratings, it sounds like this was the last one that fans really enjoyed. I'm going to put this one at great tier. Speaking of Soulfly, we have Soulfly with Dark Ages.
God may sign.
Glad I was simultaneously working on the Soulfly tier list alongside listening to these albums, as this was not included on the list I was working off of, and I get it in that they had moved into a more groove metal direction at this point, but for the name and how good this album is in such a low point year, I had to include it. Max is super pissed on this one in the wake of another family tragedy in his 8-month-old grandson, as well as the murder of his good friend Dimebag Darrell. So many bangers like Babylon, Arise Again, Carved Inside, and Frontlines, and yet again some really delightful world music influences in Portuguese lyrics to break things up and help get this extra unique twist. Riot Starter also has some like the Prodigy energy to it and features Dave Ellefson on bass from Megadeth. I'm putting this at best. Then we have Flyleaf with Flyleaf. I'm So Sick may have been one of the last, great nu metal singles of the 2000s, and from what is ultimately more of just a Christian rock band. Solid debut from a group that I never loved, but generally enjoyed the singles from. Fully Alive is another great song, as is All Around Me. I'll never be too cool to not sing along to those choruses. Do they belong on this list? I'm not exactly sure, but I feel like if I didn't at least mention I'm So Sick, somebody would have been mad. And that is a great track. I'm going to put this at good tier. Then we have Limp Bizkit with the Unquestionable Truth Volume 1.
Imagine accepting the truth.
I don't normally include EPs, but there's always an uproar when I leave this one out, so here it finally is. After the incredibly divisive Results May Vary, very much living up to its name, they came back with this very much loved release with Wes Borland back in his rightful place on guitar. 7 tracks over 29 minutes, and it goes harder than most of the longer albums here. Great bass on The Truth, dark atmosphere on The Priest, and killer beat on The Key. Also love the riffs on The Story. I'm putting this one at fantastic. We also have American Head Charge with The Feeding. I loved The War of Art, so the 4-year gap between this and that had me wondering if the follow-up could live up to the hype, and I'm not feeling like it exactly does. It's a little less in-your-face heavy, often more slow, experimental, and leaning in the melodic directions. Personally, I'm not as big a fan of that, but there are still some serious bangers on here, like Dirty, Erratic, Leave Me Alone, Pledge Allegiance, and Loyalty. Downstream also gives a little Mike Patton to it. I'm going to put this one at great tier. Also going to include Chimera with Chimera. Another new metal gone groove metal crew that still seemed worth mentioning on the stronger side of things in this year. I still find myself missing some of those more industrial elements of the earlier material, but they more than make up with it with the headbanging riffs and heavy vocals. All thrash-infused ragers start to finish. My one complaint is that they tend to drag songs out longer than they need to, but other than that, really killer album. Love the surprise sort of 90s real-time strategy sounding ending of Pray for All as well. I'm going to put this one very high up on fantastic. A couple honorable mentions that I'm sure some people are going to say down in the comments. Seether with Karma and Effect. I don't think these guys are nu metal at all. Definitely not this album. If this is nu metal, then so is Puddle of Mud and Nickelback. Also almost included Rev Theory with Truth is Currency. This album has a few kind of nu metal sounding riffs, but never really escapes the post-grunge butt rock zone for me. Pretty forgettable as far as that style goes too. And also Trapped with Someone in Control. Slightly more of a case for this album to include them, but I've just never been a fan. Just know if I had included them, it would have been very low. I will actually, though, include Stained with Chapter 5. Now, maybe I shouldn't really include these guys either, since they hadn't really been nu metal since Break the Cycle, and that album already had one foot out the door. 14 Shades of Grey pissed me off enough when it came out as the follow-up to. I will say that the riffs going into Runaway do bring a bit more of that kind of Break the Cycle energy that I was missing, and there are a few heavier tracks still, like Paper Jesus, Falling, and King of All Excuses. But others, like Right Here, continue to be more Three Doors Down than Fade or It's Been a While. I do think it's at least better than So Far Away as a single. Overall, I'll say that this is more listenable and less cheesy sounding than the last one, even if it can't hold a candle to the early stuff, so I put it at okay. We also have Boba Flex with Apologize for Nothing. The phrase that kept coming up listening to this one was, "We have Mushroomhead at home," although I think that they formed around the same time, but despite not being a big Mushroomhead fan either, this is just so much worse. Tracks like Bright Red, Violent Sex, and Turn the Heat Up also make them a potential candidate for my next Cringiest Bands video, and unlike Dope, The music doesn't save it here. I'm putting these guys at bad.
No, sir, I didn't like it.
And then, of course, we have System of a Down with Hypnotize and Mesmerize.
Waiting for my girl.
Another great set of albums from easily one of the best bands on this list overall. Attack is a great opening track, and Dreaming follows that up really strong. Kill Rock and Roll is super fun to sing along to, as is the title track, and I really dig the chorus of Tentative. Holy Mountains is another one of their more kind of powerful, mournful, darker sounding moments. BYOB is a classic, although I still maintain that it doesn't need to repeat so many times. Still lots of fun parts to scream along to. Cigaro has one of their best vocal performances by far. Also enjoy Violent Pornography.
Clip that.
Radio Video is fantastic and impossible to not sing along with, not to mention the great use of accordion. And then, of course, there's the beautiful Question. Great mix of humor and emotional weight. Probably the most impressive albums on this list overall in terms of both songwriting and performances. I am going to put both of these at best tier. Alright, I'll check out this playlist for more rankings of new metal albums by year, and this will probably be the nail in the coffin for that series. I'll probably put out a compilation. You can also check out more new metal rankings in their discographies here, but that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.